Why are you entrusting our newborn baby to my sister every day? My husband's call interrupted my day. His usually calm voice was tinged with unexpected anger. Rapidly, I sought to dispel the misunderstanding. Our daughter is at home, sleeping, I assure him. Surprised, his tone shifted. Really? He exclaimed. Confusion enveloped us both as questions arose. I'll speak with my sister-in-law to uncover the truth, I resolved. I reached out to my sister-in-law, Marissa, and uncovered a startling truth. Let me introduce myself. I'm Linda, married to Bob for 3 years, just a year younger than him. Our joy was recently doubled with the arrival of our daughter Hannah. She's the epitome of cuteness, but being a first-time mom has its challenges. With my parents living far away, I didn't have the luxury of heading back home after childbirth. Since leaving the hospital, I've been navigating this new world solo during the day. I must admit, I've been getting by, largely thanks to Bob's unwavering support. Despite his long work hours, he's always there for Hannah and me, never once complaining. His gentle demeanor eases any parenting stresses I encounter. Whether it's struggling to soothe Hannah to sleep or tending to her cries in the dead of night, his presence has been a lifeline, and I'm immensely grateful for it. So you can imagine my shock when he called, his voice laced with unexpected frustration. Linda. Mom just called me. What's going on? He demanded. Confused, I replied, Your mom? What are you talking about? Why would we leave our newborn with Marissa every day? His mention of Marissa caught me off guard. She's Bob's sister, residing just a short walk away with their parents. Marissa, working from home, also takes care of her mother, making her quite flexible with her time. My husband's critique persisted. Leaving a 3-week-old baby, I couldn't fathom doing that. Marissa hasn't cared for a baby before. I get that you're tired post-birth, but you should have talked to me before entrusting her to Marissa, he expressed, his worry palpable. His distress signaled that this was no ordinary misunderstanding. Wait, I'm lost. Marissa caring for a newborn. Why did your mom call you? Why would I need your consultation? What do you mean? Leaving Hannah with Marissa? Have I been doing that? I countered, utterly bewildered. It's been nearly 2 weeks. Marissa didn't complain, not wanting to strain your relationship, but Mom couldn't stay silent, he clarified. Bob's revelation stunned me. It was a narrative I had no recollection of, with my daughter right beside me. With numerous questions swirling, I prioritized clearing the confusion. Swiftly, I assured him, our daughter's at home, asleep. She's right here with me. Bob's astonishment resurfaced. What do you mean? He inquired. I'm just as confused as you are. Honestly, I've been following the advice to keep newborns indoors, so besides medical appointments, I haven't been anywhere. I haven't even visited your family's house, and it's been a while since Marissa came over after Hannah's birth, I clarified. Then whose baby is Marissa caring for? Bob pondered aloud. I wish I knew. Why would Marissa fabricate looking after our baby? Each question seemed to spiral into another, leaving us both puzzled. As the lunch break chimes sounded through the phone, I made a decision. I need to speak with Marissa. I want to understand why she might concoct such a lie. If there's a misunderstanding, and she thinks she's caring for Hannah, that's concerning. I'll also call Mom, I announced. Bob paused before expressing his regret. I'm sorry for doubting you. I was just really worried about Hannah. It's all right. You're concerned about Hannah, aren't you? Besides, when I told you she's right here, you didn't doubt me. You trusted me, I comforted him. After our call ended, I wasted no time dialing my sister-in-law's number. Marissa, do you have a moment? There's something I need to discuss, I started. Linda, I need to talk to you too, Marissa replied. Marissa and Bob are close in age, which is why she's the same age as me despite being my sister-in-law. We've always had a good relationship, even going out together when I was dating Bob. So, it puzzled me why she hadn't mentioned anything about this situation. I couldn't fathom why she would fabricate such a story. Well, now's a good time. Bob just filled me in. Marissa, what's this about you looking after Hannah? I haven't left her with anyone, I questioned, bewildered. Marissa's surprised voice followed, accompanied by the sound of a crying baby. It seemed she was indeed tending to an infant. Listening to Marissa's reaction, a realization dawned on me. Marissa wasn't fabricating anything, she genuinely believed she was caring for Hannah. To dispel her misconception, I began to explain the truth. To dispel her misconception, I began to explain the truth. Hannah's right here with me, fast asleep. I'm really baffled by all of this. But how did you end up with a baby, Marissa? And why did you think it was Hannah? I asked, seeking clarity. Marissa replied, shedding light on the situation. Last week, Dad dropped off a baby with me. He said, Linda seems overwhelmed, so you should assist her with the baby. This revelation left me dumbfounded. Then Marissa disclosed another shocking detail. I was terrified because I've never cared for a baby. I hadn't heard from you, Linda. And when I considered calling you, Dad warned, if you contact Linda, she'll just stress out. Show some consideration for your sister-in-law. I have my own responsibilities, even when I'm at home. It appeared that my father-in-law's deceit initiated this chaos, but the identity of the child Marissa was caring for remained unclear. Thinking that confronting my father-in-law directly might resolve the confusion, I inquired if he was home. Unfortunately, he's out at the moment. Lately, he returns home late in the evening, takes the child Marissa's been tending to, claiming he'll return her to Linda, then leaves again. He usually returns in about 20 to 30 minutes, Marissa explained. Frustrated by my father-in-law's manipulation involving my daughter and me, I felt compelled to address the situation head-on. I understand. I'll discuss this with Bob, but we might visit tonight, I decided before ending the call. I promptly emailed my husband, detailing what I learned from his sister. We should ask Dad directly, came the suggestion. So when Bob returned home, we made our way to my in-laws. Along the journey, Bob recounted his conversation with his mother. Mom was also quite upset to discover that the child she thought was her grandchild wasn't. That's a significant shock, isn't it? I didn't envision Hannah's first family gathering unfolding like this. It's quite a complicated situation, he elaborated. Due to her back issues, his mother hadn't met our daughter yet. I had hoped to introduce Hannah to her once she was ready to venture out after a month. But now, I found myself disheartened that our introduction had to occur amidst such turmoil. Upon reaching my in-laws' home, we found my mother-in-law and sister-in-law both appearing bewildered as we entered. Marissa spoke up. Bob, Linda, Dad mentioned he would return the child we've been caring for, but he hasn't returned yet. Understanding the situation, Bob intervened. I see, Mom. Despite the confusion, this is our daughter Hannah. With that, I brought Hannah closer to my mother-in-law. Upon laying eyes on Hannah, my mother-in-law's expression softened. She's absolutely adorable. She bears a striking resemblance to Bob when he was a baby. I'm thrilled to finally meet her, and Linda, you've done remarkably well. I'm sorry you've been entangled in all of this, she expressed with sincerity. It's all right. I'm just as perplexed as everyone else, I responded. Just as I spoke, Marissa chimed in. I'm baffled too. Who is this child I've been caring for? I don't understand why Dad would lie like this. I've been putting in so much effort, believing it was Hannah. He should consider my feelings too. Marissa's frustration mirrored my own towards our father-in-law. Attempting to lighten the mood, Bob interjected, but Marissa, you've met Hannah before. You should have noticed it's a different baby. Well, don't all babies look alike? I thought something was off. But I assumed babies' appearances change quickly. Marissa hastily defended herself. At that moment, our father-in-law returned. I'm back. Wait, why are Bob and Linda here? Our father-in-law's panic was palpable. This deception stemmed from him. The rest of us shared disapproving glances, each silently accusing him. Struggling under the tension, our father-in-law began to stutter. Oh, Linda, it's been some time. What brings you here? Did you forget something? He attempted to divert attention. Turning to Marissa, he added, Marissa, what's going on? I asked you to check for forgotten items. I seethed with anger at our father-in-law's manipulation, using mine and my daughter's names in his deceit and then shifting the blame onto Marissa. I instinctively held my daughter closer, feeling the tension radiate through the room. Both my husband and sister-in-law shared the same sentiment, their fists clenched in frustration. It was me who broke the silence, the anger evident in my voice. Dad, seriously, are you honestly saying that? This is beyond unacceptable even for you. What do you mean? My father-in-law seemed startled by the intensity of my tone. My husband and sister-in-law echoed my sentiments, demanding answers. Dad, explain yourself. Linda has never left Hannah with anyone. Why would you fabricate such a lie? There must be a reason for someone to care for a stranger's newborn, right? That's correct. You manipulated me into caring for a child. Who is this baby? I'm terrified, even if it's my nephew's, let alone a stranger's. I won't tolerate it anymore, Marissa interjected with rapid-fire conviction. My father-in-law was speechless, while the three of us continued to glare at him, demanding the truth. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was different. She turned pale, murmuring, "No, it can't be. You're not still involved with her?" Her words left my husband, sister-in-law, and me stunned. My father-in-law began to sweat, feigning innocence. What? What are you talking about?" he stuttered, attempting to deflect. But my typically calm husband had reached his limit. "Dad, enough with the act. You've been playing dumb all along. Do you think you can deceive us? We know you've been lying about everything. Just come clean." "Wait, Bob, please calm down." I attempted to intervene, but my husband persisted. "Dad, you've been manipulating Linda and Hannah to cover up your deceit, and you owe Marissa an apology. Caring for a newborn is a monumental responsibility, even if it's your own child. Consider how overwhelming it must have been for Marissa, who has never experienced parenthood before." Once he started, my husband couldn't halt his tirade. Despite whatever excuses our father-in-law might conjure, my husband remained steadfast. Perhaps realizing he couldn't evade the truth any longer, my father-in-law spoke softly, and then he confessed to the unbelievable truth. "That child is mine." At his admission, my husband's momentum dissipated, his mouth hanging agape in disbelief. Marissa and I were equally stunned into silence. It was my mother-in-law who shattered the quiet. Her voice quivered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I knew it. You're still involved with her. I was foolish to forgive you before." "Involved with her?" my husband queried, puzzled. In response, our father-in-law's complexion paled even further. Ignoring him, my mother-in-law continued, "He had an affair. It happened around the time you two were getting married, about 3 years ago. He promised me he'd never do it again, and I forgave him. But now, that's why I thought Hannah bore a resemblance to Bob. She's his flesh and blood after all. I thought she was my true grandchild." Unable to contain her emotions any longer, my mother-in-law broke into tears. Witnessing her distress only fueled my anger towards my father-in-law. My husband regained his composure, unleashing his wrath upon our father-in-law. "You're despicable, Dad. You not only deceived us but betrayed Mom twice. How could you stoop so low? I can't fathom that someone like you is our father." Bob's outburst was followed by Marissa's incredulous response. "What do you mean by my child? Are you joking? You had a child with your mistress and left it with me? I can't believe this. How could you do something so despicable? I never want to see your face again." Despite the scathing remarks from his own children, our father-in-law merely chuckled and remarked, "Calm down. There's nothing we can do about what's already happened. The mistress didn't want to marry me or anything like that. She just didn't have any money, so she had to work. In the meantime, I had to take care of the child." I couldn't bear witnessing my father-in-law's callousness. "Enough," I interjected, my voice trembling with anger. "This isn't a laughing matter. A life has been brought into this world. Do you grasp the gravity of that at your age?" My father-in-law seemed taken aback, losing his balance and falling onto the ground. However, instead of offering assistance, Bob and Marissa hurled insults. "You worthless old man, you're no longer our father. I can't even stand to look at you." "Get out of our sight," they exclaimed. Even faced with their fury, my father-in-law attempted to downplay the situation, saying, "Don't say such things." My lips tensed as I stared daggers at my father-in-law. "I no longer have the patience to tolerate someone like you. Let's get divorced," I declared firmly. My father-in-law's smile vanished, his face contorting with wrinkles as he became serious. "But didn't you forgive me last time?" he pleaded. However, his attempt at manipulation was futile. "Yes, I forgave you for your infidelity, but I won't tolerate your disrespect any longer," I retorted. "If having you out of our lives brings peace to our home, then so be it. And as for my survival, I'll manage just fine without you," I added. As my father-in-law clung to my mother-in-law's feet, I watched him with disdain. Bob and Marissa mirrored my sentiments, their gazes cold and unwavering. It was evident that everyone in the room had reached their limit with my father-in-law. Marissa erupted in anger. I'll take care of Mom, so we'll be fine without you. But how do you plan to live? You've always relied on Mom for everything from cooking to laundry. Marissa's words visibly rattled my father-in-law. He turned to my mother-in-law with pleading eyes. You wouldn't leave me, would you? We spent decades together. You can't imagine life without me, can you? However, his hopes were swiftly dashed as my mother-in-law shook off his clinging arm. Stop kidding yourself. How much do you need to degrade people to feel satisfied? Who would want to stay with a cheater like you? I'm filing for divorce right now. If you're so fond of her, why don't you go be with your mistress? My mother-in-law snapped, her voice firm and resolute. What? Wait, let's talk. We can fix this. That woman meant nothing to me. You're the only one I love. My father-in-law pleaded, clutching onto my mother-in-law once more, but he was met with another wave of Marissa's fury. Talking to someone who refuses to acknowledge their mistakes is pointless. We're leaving this place soon, and Mom is coming with us. Until we're gone, stay away from home, Dad. I never want to see you again. Now get out. Marissa demanded, attempting to forcefully escort my father-in-law out. When he refused to budge, Bob had to physically drag him away. Please wait. Give me another chance, just one more. My father-in-law pleaded until the very end, but his pleas fell on deaf ears as nobody paid him any attention. As Marissa had foreseen, my father-in-law's life spiraled into chaos. Struggling to manage even the simplest tasks, he found himself unable to tolerate the growing clutter and filth in his home. Desperate for assistance, he turned to his mistress, only to be met with rejection at her doorstep. It appeared she had no intention of marrying him either. With no one left to care for the children, his mistress was unable to work, leading to financial strain. She began pressing my father-in-law for alimony, even resorting to legal action to secure child support. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law relocated to an apartment not far from ours. As over a month had passed since Hannah's birth, I started visiting them more frequently, accompanied by Hannah. I maintained my amicable relationship with Marissa, acting as if nothing had changed, and my bond with my mother-in-law remained strong. Moving forward, I'm determined to raise my daughter to the best of my abilities, with the support of my husband, sister-in-law, and mother-in-law by my side.
One night during our honeymoon, I suddenly woke up to overhear my husband engaged in a secretive and disturbing phone conversation. Trembling with anxiety, I carefully peered at his phone and discovered something shocking. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I took his passport, packed my things, and flew back to New York alone, planning my next move against him. Upon my return, I was approached by a mysterious individual. My name is Kate, she introduced herself. I work at an office in New York. I met your husband through a mutual friend. After a few dinners and realizing our chemistry, we married following a year of dating. Yuan is handsome and kind-hearted, but there was something that had been troubling me. My concern began as our wedding approached. Normally, Yuan came home later than I did, but one day when my overtime extended and I returned late, something felt off. I noticed a pair of women's shoes next to Yuan's work shoes, shoes that didn't belong to me. Suspicion grew as I overheard a conversation between a man and a woman. Though I couldn't catch all of it, Yuan's unmistakable voice and the woman's cheerful tone fueled my worries. I quickly activated the video function on my smartphone and entered the living room, only to find Yuan and my mother-in-law there. "Oh, you're back. Welcome home, Kate," Yuan said, his tone apologetic. I was relieved to see my suspicions about infidelity were unfounded, but then another surprise awaited me. The room was filled with stacked cardboard boxes. Confused, I asked, "What's with all these boxes? What's going on?" "We're packing for a move," Yuan explained. "Mom is helping." "Moving where?" I asked, my head spinning. "You didn't mention anything about moving." "Oh, I assumed that after getting married, moving into our house was the next step," Yuan's mother said nonchalantly. "I wasn't informed of any plans to live with your parents," I protested. "This sudden change disrupts my vision of our married life. I can't agree to such unilateral decisions." My mother-in-law's response was casual. "Isn't it normal to live together after marriage? If that's an issue, you might as well consider divorce." Her words cut deeply. "It's easier for both of us to live here, especially if you ever need anything. It's a win-win," Yuan added. Feeling cornered between Yuan and his mother, I reluctantly agreed to move into their home. The transition proved incredibly stressful. Yuan's attachment to his mother became even more apparent. He constantly referenced her opinions, and most of the household chores were still managed by her. Whenever I cooked, he'd comment that Mom's cooking tastes better. It seemed my mother-in-law took pleasure in this dynamic, and my father-in-law remained silently observant, never engaging with me. I often felt undervalued in the house. What bothered me most was my mother-in-law's extravagant spending habits. The situation was more challenging than I had anticipated, and the strains on our marriage began to show. I soon realized that my mother-in-law had a penchant for luxury brand items, buying them eagerly whenever a new release caught her eye. Each time a new product was announced, she would ask me, "I want this, but I'm short on money. Can you lend me some?" Although I thought to myself that if she didn't have the money, she shouldn't buy it, I couldn't object since she handled all the housework. As a result, the savings I had accumulated since my student days were dwindling. When I brought this up to my husband, he simply said, "We're allowed to live here, so don't complain." While I didn't actively choose to live in this house, there was a reason I stayed. Deep down, I knew my husband genuinely respected me. On our days off, he always made an effort to spend quality time with me and had even planned our honeymoon in advance. Despite the difficulties of living with his family, his love kept me going. Finally, our much-anticipated honeymoon arrived. We were heading to Italy, a destination I had always dreamed of visiting for its authentic cuisine. My husband had made this dream a reality, and the excitement of traveling abroad with the person I loved most made my heart race. However, our eagerly awaited adventure took a drastic turn one night. Late into the evening, I woke up to use the bathroom and noticed that my husband was not beside me. Assuming he might be up for the same reason, I left the bedroom and overheard him on the phone. Who could he be calling at this hour? As I listened closely, a chilling statement reached my ears. "By this time tomorrow, Kate will be long gone to the afterlife. Don't worry, Mom. I won't mess up. I'll call you later." The voice on the phone seemed to be his mother's, and the implication of what he said about me being in the afterlife sent a shiver down my spine. Fearful that he might notice me, I hurriedly pretended to be asleep. When my husband returned to bed and soon fell into a deep sleep, I quietly took his smartphone and went to the bathroom. His phone wasn't locked, making it easy for me to access. Although I knew snooping was wrong in this potentially life-threatening situation, I felt it was necessary. I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. I opened his messaging app and read through his conversation with his mother. The messages revealed a chilling plan. He intended to kill me for the insurance money, which his mother would then use to splurge on luxury brands. The blood drained from my face as the horrifying reality sunk in. My husband had always been somewhat of a mama's boy, but I had never imagined he would scheme with his mother like this. In a panic, I took a screenshot of their messages and lay back on the bed. Even with my eyes closed, the overwhelming fear made it impossible to sleep. The night dragged on, and when morning arrived, bringing the usual buzz of trains and people starting their day, I knew I had to get out of there. I quickly gathered my belongings, deciding to leave the hotel and head home. As I packed my suitcase, I noticed my husband's passport on the table. A sudden idea struck me. I would leave him stranded abroad. I grabbed the passport and rushed out, heading straight to the airport. Ignoring his numerous calls, I boarded a flight back to New York. Once home, I began preparing for my retaliation. I knew I couldn't return to the house where I lived with his parents, so I found a reasonably priced hotel in New York. I started collecting additional evidence and contacting lawyers. Whenever his parents were out, his mother at her craft class and his father golfing, I would sneak into their house to retrieve my belongings. My husband's relentless attempts to contact me went unanswered as I ignored them completely. One day, while packing my things at his parents' house, I thought I had a couple of hours before they would return. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. "Kate, is that you?" I jumped, startled to find my father-in-law standing there. He wasn't supposed to be back so early. Our honeymoon was supposed to last until today. My presence there was unexpected, and I struggled to come up with an explanation. Should I tell him the truth about why I returned to New York? But what if he was involved in the plan with my husband? As I was on the verge of panicking, my father-in-law suggested, "How about we go somewhere else to talk, like a nearby cafe?" To my surprise, he made this offer, likely because his wife would be returning soon. I agreed, and we headed to the cafe. "Why are you here in the middle of your honeymoon? Is Yuan back?" he asked once we were seated. I hesitated, unsure whether he was involved in their scheme. If he was, revealing my plan for revenge would be futile. Didn't your wife mention anything to you? I asked cautiously. After a moment of thought, he replied, "She hasn't said a word to me." His expression suggested genuine confusion. Relieved, I decided to explain everything. "Do you know about this plan?" I handed him the printed messages between my husband and his mother. His eyes widened as he read them. "I've seen them talking together a few times, but I had no idea they were plotting something like this," he admitted. It was clear he was genuinely unaware of their scheme. I told him how I had overheard my husband's conversation with his mother in Italy, which led me to discover their plan. The shock drove me to return to New York alone. "I see. I'm deeply sorry that my wife was involved in something like this," he said. "There's no need to apologize, father-in-law. It's not your fault," I reassured him. "As for the future, I'm truly sorry, but I'm considering ending my marriage with Yuan." "That's your decision, Kate. I want you to make the choice that's right for you." "I'm at a loss for words about all this," he said. Afterwards, my father-in-law continued to apologize. Up until now, I had only sensed a distant atmosphere from him and worried that he might not think well of me. But seeing his genuine concern and sincerity, I began to believe this was his true nature. I couldn't reconcile how someone as kind-hearted as my father-in-law could have such a problematic wife and son. As I pondered this, he shared an incident with me. "Kate, did my wife ask you for money to buy luxury brand items?" he asked. "Yes, she did," I admitted. "It might be partly my fault." "How so?" he asked. "When we were newlyweds, I gave her an expensive designer bag for her birthday. Since then, she seemed obsessed with branded goods. I wish she'd choose items more appropriate for her age," he explained. "I didn't realize she even borrowed money to buy them. I got really angry with her for that, and I thought she had understood. I never imagined she would try to get money from you. I must have underestimated her." He bowed his head in apology. I had never understood my mother-in-law's obsession with branded items. But even if that was a factor, I couldn't forgive her actions. "It's not your fault, father-in-law," I said. "She continued her behavior even after you warned her. It's her own issue." "That's comforting to hear," he replied. "By the way, where's Yuan? Didn't he come back with you?" I hesitated. How would he react if he knew his son was stranded abroad? I had to be honest now. "The truth is, I took Yuan's passport with me, so he might not be able to return for a while," I confessed. I know it was a drastic move, but it was the only way to ensure no one interfered with my preparations. My father-in-law looked shocked at first, but then he chuckled. "I see. Given the situation, it might have been unavoidable. That's why he said that." "Wait, what did he say?" I asked. "Well, I overheard my wife talking to Yuan on the phone on the day you returned to New York. Yuan seemed a bit flustered by your absence but mentioned that it might actually make our plan work. At that moment, I didn't understand, but now it makes sense," he said. "If that's the case, I'll support you too." "That would be very helpful," I said. As we chatted, catching up on everything that had happened so far, my smartphone rang unexpectedly. It was Yuan. He must have realized his passport was missing while preparing to return home and decided to call. I answered the call. "Hello." "Kate, finally. You picked up. Where are you?" "I've been worried sick because I couldn't reach you." "I'm glad to hear you're okay," Yuan said, his voice filled with concern. "I'm relieved you're okay too," I replied. "I'm sorry. The truth is, I received an urgent message from my parents and had to return to New York immediately," I explained. "I was so rushed that I didn't have time to contact you." "I see," Yuan said. "But do you know where my passport is?" "Actually, because I had to leave in such a hurry, I accidentally took your passport with me," I admitted. "What am I supposed to do now?" Yuan asked, sounding frustrated. "If it's alright with you, I think it would be faster for you to get your passport reissued there rather than waiting for me to send it," I suggested. "Reissue it," Yuan said, exasperated. "You know I can't take any more time off from work." "I'll contact your workplace and explain the situation," I assured him. "I'll also inform my in-laws. I'll handle it from here." "Okay, I trust you. I'm truly sorry for the trouble. Please take care and come back safely," Yuan said. I ended the call and took a deep breath. My quick thinking had helped manage the situation. Thanks to my father-in-law's assistance, the process of moving our belongings and handling the divorce proceedings went smoothly. The day finally came for my husband to return. His passport had been reissued without issue, and he came home with my mother-in-law, who had picked him up from the airport. I'm back, Yuan announced. I didn't expect such a mess at the end. Really, it's Kate's fault. She needs to be more careful. My mother-in-law, having heard the story from Yuan, grumbled in annoyance. Perhaps she was displeased because my early return had disrupted some of her plans. While I had my own grievances to address, I kept my focus on the upcoming situation, considering these matters trivial in comparison. When Yuan and my mother-in-law arrived, my father-in-law, with a stern look on his face, said, "Sorry to bother you right after you got home, but come here." He then led them to the living room. "Please have a seat," I said, motioning to my husband and mother-in-law. They looked slightly startled, but complied and sat down quietly. I fixed my gaze on them and began, "You must be tired from the trip, but there's something important we need to discuss." "Important?" my husband asked, his confusion evident. "What are you talking about?" "I'll get straight to the point," I said, my voice steady. "Yuan, I want a divorce." "What? A divorce?" Yuan blinked rapidly, clearly taken aback. "Kate, what are you talking about? You left our son in Italy, and now you want a divorce just as you're back? This is incomprehensible and thoughtless." "Thoughtless?" I retorted. "Isn't that what you two are being?" "What did you say?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, her eyes widening in shock. "Do you really have no awareness? What is this supposed to mean? Can you please explain?" I handed her a printout of a messaging app screen. "This is a conversation between you and my husband, discussing your outrageous plans." "What's this? Anyone could fake something like this," she scoffed. "Plans and evidence don't mean anything if they're made up." "If this alone isn't enough," I said, placing a voice recorder on the table, "how about this?" I pressed play, and the recorded conversation began. The recording clearly captured my husband and mother-in-law discussing how their plans were thwarted by my unexpected return to New York and their subsequent disappointment. "I managed to record this thanks to my father-in-law," I explained. "My mother-in-law is hard of hearing and always uses speaker mode, making her calls loud and clear. My father-in-law took the initiative to record their conversation. This should be hard to argue against, don't you think?" "Wait a minute," Yuan said, his voice tense. "Kate, it's not like that. Please just wait." "I just acted out of necessity for my mother," Yuan said, his voice earnest. "I never really wanted any of this. But she said she needed money for luxury items, and I couldn't bear to see her sad. Now I realize I don't want a divorce. Let's leave this house and start a new life together, just the two of us. How about that?" I sighed deeply, struggling to keep my frustration in check. "What kind of thought process leads to such optimism?" I asked. "You should really stop calling her mom all the time. It doesn't sit well with me. I appreciate your care for your mother, but plotting to get rid of your wife for insurance money to buy her gifts is beyond comprehension. Living with someone like that? No way. Just the thought gives me a headache." Yuan seemed unprepared for my response and was at a loss for words. "I'm going to divorce you no matter what," I continued firmly. "I'll be demanding the division of property from both of you and also asking for reimbursement for the luxury items I bought for your mother in the past. But if you do that, I won't be able to buy any more bags or watches," my mother-in-law interjected, still fixated on her luxury goods. Her obsession left me speechless. Enough was enough. Suddenly, my father-in-law shouted, "All you think about is yourself. Have you ever considered how much pain Kate has been through? Are the luxury items you crave so desperately worth someone else's suffering? Do you even understand the emotional burden you've placed on her?" His words struck a chord and silenced them. While his outburst lightened my mood slightly, I wasn't finished yet. "Yuan, when did you find out?" I asked. "On the first night of our honeymoon," he replied, looking down. "I overheard you talking to your mother in the middle of the night. That's when I found out, so I returned to New York the next morning." My husband seemed to realize something at that moment. "You didn't tell the company about this, did you?" "Who knows?" I replied. "But I think we'll find out soon enough." As if on cue, Yuan's cell phone rang. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. The call was from his company. Hesitating, Yuan answered, "Oh, yes. What? Fired?" Wait a minute, but before he could explain, the call ended. "I've already submitted evidence regarding this matter to your company," I said. With the loss of both his job and his marriage, Yuan crumbled to the floor, unable to come to terms with reality. "From now on, any communication will go through my lawyer. Don't ever show up in front of me again." Thus, our brief marriage ended abruptly. However, the story didn't end there. My lawyer advised me to report their actions to the police as their plan constituted illegal activity. I followed the advice, and while they weren't arrested, they did face fines. My husband struggled to find new employment, and my mother-in-law faced criticism from the community. To cover the damages and other costs, she had to sell most of her luxury possessions. The only item she kept was a bag given to her by my father-in-law on her birthday. Now, my father-in-law controls the family finances, and my mother-in-law's spending is severely restricted. They've certainly learned a valuable lesson. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying my single life in a city apartment. Though my marriage ended soon after it began, I don't feel lonely or sad. On the contrary, I feel refreshed and liberated from that household. If I ever decide to marry again, I'm done with living with in-laws. Living alone has its challenges, but the freedom to live without catering to others is truly liberating. Now that I'm free from my mother-in-law's financial demands, both mentally and financially, I've started saving again. My hope is to share happy times with someone special in the future. That's my wish.
Hello everyone, I am a 27-year-old woman, and I found myself in the role of a guardian for my 10-year-old sister. This responsibility fell on my shoulders because our parents, who had never been inclined towards parental duties, made it abundantly clear from my childhood that they were not ready for the responsibilities of parenthood. My mother conceived me in the hopes that I would be a miracle fixer for their crumbling marriage, and my father, perhaps to avoid further disputes, went along with it. However, their plan backfired spectacularly, turning my life into a living nightmare. They consistently neglected me, both physically and emotionally, ignoring their obligations. Despite a few instances where teachers noticed marks on me, my parents brushed it off as mere clumsiness, preventing me from receiving the help I desperately needed. When I turned 11, my first therapist advised me to be submissive and try to work things out with my parents. Unfortunately, this approach proved futile. I had to change therapists multiple times before finding one who advocated for my mental peace, urging me to leave my toxic home environment. However, financial constraints made it impossible for me to leave until I turned 18. While I was working to save money, my mother manipulated and guilt-tripped me, labeling me as selfish for wanting to break free. By the time I was 16, I had made it clear that I was biding my time until I could escape. My parents eventually gave up on me, which meant losing their financial support, but also gaining freedom from their constant interference. When I was 17, my mother became pregnant at the age of 42. Amidst the chaos of the pregnancy, my parents were preoccupied with the new baby, so much so that they helped me move out quickly, eager to convert my room into a perfect nursery. Although this made my departure easier, it left me with mixed feelings, relief for escaping, yet a lingering sense of being replaceable. Despite these challenges, I endeavored to stay strong and moved out, determined to create a better future for myself. At the age of 18, life was genuinely wonderful. By the time I reached 20, I secured a job, earned a place on the dean's list, and could afford an apartment all to myself. It was a time of triumph and independence, but this blissful phase was about to shatter. One day, my parents arrived unannounced, accompanied by my younger sister. They handed her to me, explaining that she was more trouble than they could handle, and that I should be the one to care for her. I was caught off guard, and before I could fully grasp the situation, they left, leaving me holding my 3-year-old sister. In my state of confusion, I reached out to my friends, who had become my most significant support system over the past 3 years. Their advice was unanimous. It was better for my sister to be with me, as she could have a better life than I ever did. 3 of my friends rallied around us, essentially becoming surrogate parents for my sister. We all took turns looking after her and worked diligently to ensure she felt cherished and cared for. At one point, my sister genuinely believed she had 3 moms and 1 dad, which I found endearing, but I gently corrected her as she grew older. Throughout this time, my parents were off traveling and enjoying their lives, as evident from their social media posts. I'm relieved that my sister didn't experience the neglect I did, but when she turned 8, she started questioning why our parents never attended any of her events. I didn't want her to feel abandoned, so I told her that our parents were busy with their work, which made it challenging for them to visit us as frequently as they'd like. While she accepted this explanation, it was evident that she wasn't entirely satisfied with it. To address her concerns, I arranged therapy for her and reached out to our parents, urging them to visit whenever possible. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, such as the pandemic, they were unable to do so. That's why, just a week ago, on my 27th birthday, I extended an invitation to my parents. I wanted them to visit, and they did. However, their behavior shattered me. When they arrived, they acted as if everything was back to normal. My mom immediately began criticizing every aspect of my apartment, while my dad opened a bottle of whiskey and refused to engage in any conversation that didn't revolve around his thoughts or desires. My mom also tried to dictate changes to my room, and when my sister returned from her ballet class with one of my friends, my mom approached her for a hug. Surprisingly, my sister, who hadn't seen our parents in 7 years, pulled away and sought refuge behind my friend. My mom persisted, asking for a hug repeatedly. It was then that I stepped in, asking her to respect my sister's choice not to embrace her. In response, my mom slapped me across the face in front of my friend and sister. She launched into a tirade, belittling me and insinuating that I should be grateful for her motherhood and the care she provided because no one else would. Hearing her disrespectful words was like a trip back in time. I looked at my horrified sister, shielded by my friend, and I knew I had to stand up for myself. I informed my mom that she could leave if she couldn't respect my house rules, especially the one about respecting my sister's wishes. She scoffed and refused. I gave her 30 minutes to leave with her belongings, warning her that I would call the police if she didn't comply, especially given that everyone had witnessed her slapping me. She dared me to do it, so I did just that. I called the cops. The situation wasn't pleasant. My mom and dad both called me names, but my friends, sister, and others present thought I did the right thing. I'm torn between not wanting to be an a-hole and standing up for myself and the people I care about. I truly appreciate the overwhelming support from you all. I didn't mention it in my previous update, but I pressed charges against my mom for slapping me. The mark of her hand was visible on my cheek, and my friend and sister confirmed to the police that she had indeed slapped me. As a result, she will be taken to court, and we hope to resolve everything there. The court date is set for tomorrow, and I'm not quite sure how to proceed at this point. I never imagined I'd find myself in the position of having to document my mother's actions, but that's the reality I'm facing now. Hello, everyone. A few significant events have unfolded during the court proceedings. The judge ruled in my favor in the domestic violence case, a decision that brings me some relief. Additionally, the court was informed about the situation with my sister and suggested that I take over her legal guardianship. I hadn't considered this possibility before, but when the court proposed it, I thought it could be a great solution. I agreed, and 2 days ago, I officially became my sister's legal guardian. My friend mentioned that my sister was deeply affected by witnessing our mother's abusive behavior towards me. Despite her previous excitement about meeting our parents, seeing them mistreat me changed her perspective. Now, she no longer wishes to be with them. Honestly, my sister makes me feel more valued and appreciated than anyone else ever has. I firmly believe I did the right thing by standing up for myself, and I refuse to feel guilty for it. On another note, it's been 3 years since I last saw my ex-wife. We had been in a relationship for 7 years, starting as high school friends and then becoming lovers. Our bond was strong, but when I landed an internship at a prestigious law firm, my girlfriend insisted we get married immediately. I tried explaining that while I was earning enough to sustain us, waiting until I was on the payroll or earning a larger income would be more sensible. However, she was unwilling to wait, feeling that her youth was slipping away, and she wanted to be married to me as soon as possible. I had a hunch that one of the primary reasons she wanted to get married was the social pressure surrounding us. Her friends and cousins were vocal about their disapproval of our decision to delay marriage. Eventually, I relented, believing that with a bit more effort, I could strike a balance. This way, I could make her happy while also securing a financially stable future. So we got married when I was just shy of 28. My wife was overjoyed that we were finally married, and she no longer doubted my affection for her, having finally put a ring on it. Our wedding was quite extravagant, and my wife didn't want to compromise on any of her plans. She also limited our parents' financial contributions to a certain amount, with 60% of the costs covered by us and the remaining 40% by our parents. Within the portion we paid for, I covered about 75% of it. Understandably, it would take some time for my finances to recover from this significant expenditure, and I estimated it would take around 5 years. However, I had faith in my ability to do so. Fortunately, about 2 months after the wedding, I received a remarkable job opportunity. It required me to relocate out of state for 6 to 9 months, but it promised a substantial increase in income, around 300 times my current salary. I was ecstatic about the prospect, shared the news with my wife, and received her enthusiastic approval. One of the things I cherished most in our relationship was our mutual desire to see each other succeed in our respective fields. Her encouragement was both expected and deeply appreciated. During the first 2 months of my new job, I received frequent calls, some of which I couldn't answer due to my busy schedule and time zone differences. This occasionally led to arguments, as my partner felt I wasn't focusing enough on our relationship. However, I tried my best to make her feel loved and appreciated, doing everything I could from my new location, including making regular phone calls. I made every effort to call her whenever I could, and on the occasions I couldn't, I tried my best to compensate for it later. Our relationship improved slightly during this period, but it was short-lived. By the 4th month of my absence, my wife's interest in calling dwindled. She claimed to have found hobbies that kept her occupied and tired, leading to fewer conversations. I trusted her explanation at the time, unaware that her hobbies involved other men. But we'll get to that shortly. Upon completing my work, it was our first anniversary. Eager to surprise her, I returned home, hoping to find my wife overjoyed at my return. Instead, I walked in on her being intimate with 2 men in our bed. As they were engrossed in their activities, they didn't notice me standing in the doorway. In that moment, I realized I no longer wanted to share a home with her. I called my boss, who appreciated my work and offered me another 9-month contract. I left the house without explaining much to her. Strangely, when she asked if I was coming back, she seemed almost relieved. I couldn't comprehend her reaction. I dealt with the betrayal and the pain on my own until the 3rd month of my new contract. By then, we had been living separately for over 6 months. I filed for a divorce, and she surprisingly signed the papers without much resistance. She moved out soon after, and I decided to continue with my traveling work. Fast forward 3 years, and I'm back in my city. I achieved the financial goal I set for myself, but I realized constant travel wasn't for me. I discovered my ex-wife had moved on and married another lawyer from a rival firm, supposedly because he earned more than I did and because I was allegedly emotionally abusive. I understood the financial aspect, but I couldn't fathom the accusation of emotional abuse. I felt hurt, yet I tried not to let it consume me. She hadn't spoken to me for years, even when we encountered each other at the courthouse for the last time. However, fate intervened when one of my clients sought my representation during his divorce. He believed the division of assets was unfair, and upon researching the case, I discovered he was right. Additionally, my ex-wife's new partner was representing the client's wife, creating a conflict of interest. As I delved into the evidence and conducted research, I received a call from a familiar number. It was my ex-wife. She was hysterical, explaining that she had discovered her husband's infidelity with a client. An improper relationship between a lawyer and a client could lead to the lawyer's disbarment. I asked her why she thought I could help her in this situation. She claimed she knew I wasn't in the States, a blatant lie, and suggested that due to my influential parents, I might be able to prevent her partner from getting disbarred. This was the same woman who had treated me as if I were invisible, someone who had disregarded me entirely. Suddenly, she wanted my help with something so crucial. I found her request dubious, to say the least. Anticipating a legal battle against him, I hired a private investigator to verify my ex-wife's claims. What I discovered was even juicier. He was not only cheating on my ex-wife, but with my client's soon-to-be ex-wife. It was too significant to ignore, so I took action. I presented a better settlement to the court, revealing the lawyer-client affair. I informed the Bar Association about their inappropriate relationship, using my boss as a reference. I shared this situation with my friends, and most of them thought I was wrong for reporting his misconduct. They accused me of meddling when I should have minded my own business. I'm curious if you all share their perspective. Do you believe I'm in the wrong? And if so, why? I appreciate your kind words. They mean a lot. Generally, I don't let others' opinions affect me, given my profession. Thick skin is a requirement in my line of work. However, when friends cast doubt on my actions, it does make me question myself. Your support and shared experiences are incredibly reassuring. Recently, I learned that my ex-wife's partner was disbarred, leaving him without a source of income. Considering my ex-wife's obsession with brand names, this situation won't sustain her lifestyle. I can't say I feel guilty about it. My ex-wife finally figured out my involvement and called me, berating me for my actions. In her eyes, I should have respected her partner and refrained from filing a complaint. She accused me of twisting her words to win a trivial case. I disagree but listened to her rant and promptly blocked her. Frankly, I'm content being out of touch with her. Diego, I believe I'd have made the same choice, or perhaps even a more severe one. You had evidence vital to your case, and you used it. I don't see that as unethical. You did minimal harm to her, dude. She's just being overly dramatic. Your friends aren't being fair if they think protecting a cheater is more critical than your case. You did the right thing. Her partner deserved to be reported. He shouldn't be in a profession where he can't maintain proper boundaries and etiquette. Thank you for tuning in today, everyone. If you have your own story to share, please email us using the address provided in the description below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It greatly supports the channel. We'll catch you in the next episode.
I am Monica, 26 years old, and I work as a web designer, growing up in a small rural town with my grandparents, parents, and younger sister Linda. Life was far from fair. My sister, 7 years my junior, was the apple of everyone's eye. Her opinions were always prioritized, leaving me feeling neglected and unimportant. The favoritism was blatant. On Linda's birthdays, she received lavish gifts, while mine, close to Christmas, were combined into a single occasion, marked with practical gifts like books I had no interest in. When Linda started playing soccer, our parents were her biggest supporters, never missing a game or practice. In contrast, when I played my final tennis match in middle school, they were too busy driving Linda somewhere to attend. This pattern of disparity defined my childhood, fostering a growing sense of inadequacy and loneliness. Still, Linda wasn't blind to the injustice. She often stood up for me when our parents compared us harshly. Monica is good at studying and teaching. She can do anything, she'd say. After my last tennis match, she even handed me a bouquet of flowers she had picked herself, whispering, "Good job." Our grandparents, too, tried to intervene on my behalf, reprimanding my parents for their behavior. But when my grandmother passed away, and soon after my grandfather, any buffer against my parents' criticism dissolved. Linda continued to support me for a while, but as my mother began targeting her with the same harshness, she eventually stopped. "If you're always going to side with your sister, you might as well stand outside too," my mother would sneer. To protect Linda, I told her to stop defending me. From then on, Linda focused on excelling in sports and academics, becoming the daughter my parents could proudly praise. Meanwhile, our parents' finances took a hit after the funerals, and they informed me there was no money for college. My dream of studying design at university was crushed. Instead, I graduated high school and took a job at a small design company far from home. There, I worked tirelessly, starting as an office assistant but seizing every opportunity to learn from the designers. My passion for web design kept me going, and I spent weekends studying online courses to build my skills. 3 years later, I was promoted to the design team, and 5 years after that, I became a full-fledged web designer, trusted with leading projects. During this time, I rarely returned home. Visiting only brought back the sting of my parents' disapproval, so I focused entirely on my career. 8 years after high school, I received unexpected news. Linda was preparing for university entrance exams, aiming for a prestigious medical school in the city. Despite everything, I felt proud of her. When she was accepted into her first choice school, I congratulated her warmly. "Linda, congratulations. You've worked so hard, and I admire your dedication." She thanked me, her voice tinged with embarrassment, but soon revealed a concern. The school suggested a donation. "It's not mandatory, but Mom and Dad are worried about how it would look if we don't contribute. With tuition and living expenses already being so high, they don't know what to do." Linda planned to cover her living expenses with part-time work, but I could see the strain medical school would impose. My parents, unable to afford the donation, had pushed Linda to ask me instead of approaching me themselves. Their audacity left me stunned. Even though I resented their actions, I couldn't ignore Linda's predicament. I decided to support my sister, covering the donation and entrance fees so she could begin her new life at university. Linda moved into an apartment near the campus, and since it wasn't far from where I lived, I thought she could rely on me if she ever needed help. However, as she became immersed in college life, her responses to me grew increasingly curt. I'd get messages like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this, please buy it for me," and I would arrange whatever she needed, supporting her in ways she couldn't ask of our parents. Occasionally, we'd meet for a meal, but even then, she remained distant, engrossed in her smartphone rather than engaging with me. When I tried to talk about her studies or lighten the mood, she'd brush me off, complaining that studying was hard. Her demeanor left me bewildered. At one such dinner, I tried to steer the conversation with a light-hearted comment. "Mom and Dad probably only care about you, though," I said, smiling, but Linda suddenly stared at me with an icy expression and snorted. "Of course. A medical student like me and a high school graduate designer like you are incomparable. No one cares about a job that doesn't even need qualifications like yours." Her words felt like a slap. "There's no need to say it like that," I replied, stunned. Linda rolled her eyes. "It's the truth. Being a designer is just a title. Anyone can make a website if they look it up online. You'd probably be better off getting a real qualification, but that's hard for someone who only graduated high school." I tried to defend myself. "It's not that simple. I'm studying and working hard every day. You shouldn't judge without understanding." Linda dismissed me with a displeased glance and clicked her tongue. "Dad and Mom are right. They say you're a disappointment. Someone who couldn't even go to college. I'm only here because they told me to watch over you and make sure you don't fall any lower." I froze, her words sinking in like stones. Memories of my parents comparing us since childhood rushed back. Linda is smart, kind, and dependable, while Monica is stupid, clumsy, and can't do anything. I lowered my head, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Seeing me bow my head, Linda mistook my silence for tears and smirked. "I'm going home now," she said briskly and left. Living on her own had transformed Linda. Surrounded by exceptional people and showered with praise from our parents, she fully believed in the image they painted of her as a prodigy destined to be a top doctor. Meanwhile, their disdain for me was reflected in her tone and attitude, as though she had absorbed their judgment entirely. That winter, as usual, I returned home for the holidays. My parents had asked me to come back with Linda, who hadn't visited since starting university. When we arrived, it was clear who the focus of their attention was. The table was piled high with steak, pizza, and treats to celebrate her visit. That evening, neighbors, relatives, and even Linda's old classmates gathered for a grand party. Linda basked in the attention, boasting loudly about her life at university. "Mom keeps asking me to come home more often, but you know how tough it is at the country's most prestigious medical school. I can't just leave my team projects or relax at home. People are always contacting me about something, and it's exhausting." I busied myself in the kitchen, avoiding the spotlight, but I could hear her voice dominating the conversation. To the parents and relatives, her boasting seemed fine, but to the neighbors and classmates, it must have sounded grating. When I brought out a tray of wine, an elderly neighbor tried to shift the attention to me. "Monica, aren't you working in design?" Before I could respond, Linda and my parents cut in. "You can't really say much about her. She's trying, but she didn't even go to college. She's such a disappointment," my mother said bluntly. The room fell awkwardly silent. Many of those present hadn't gone to college themselves and were raising families or working hard, but they refrained from contradicting her. Only my parents and Linda seemed oblivious to the discomfort. Feeling humiliated, I tried to slip away, but Linda stopped me. "You still come home a lot, don't you, Monica? I guess you don't think about anything. Maybe that's why you're so bold," she said, laughing loudly. Our parents joined in, laughing as if it was all a joke. "If you say that much, Linda, it'll hurt her feelings." "Poor Monica," my father added mockingly. My anger boiled over. I clenched my fists and managed to squeeze out, "It's better if I don't come back next year." "I get it." Relatives and neighbors looked at me with concern, but I ignored them, putting down the tray and grabbing my coat and bag. Linda smirked as I prepared to leave. "I understand, don't bother coming back again," she said with a wave, and my parents echoed her sentiment with casual indifference. Heart pounding with anger and sorrow, I stepped out into the cold night, leaving behind the people who had so thoroughly dismissed me. I didn't look back. As I headed to the station, I fought to suppress the storm of emotion swirling within me. Returning home always left me with a heavy heart. When I was aspiring to be a web designer, I could use my studies as an excuse to distance myself from my parents. But as I grew older and advanced in my career, I found it harder to sever ties completely. The lingering sense of familial obligation weighed on me, even as I struggled to reconcile the disappointment and anger I felt toward them. Linda was still a university student, young and inexperienced in the realities of working life. Perhaps that's why she couldn't grasp how much effort it took to navigate society independently. I told myself that our parents had likely done their best in their own way to raise their children. Still, it was undeniable that they had spent years putting Linda on a pedestal, praising her as a genius while adopting a condescending attitude toward me. That winter, Linda's terrible behavior during our family gathering solidified my resolve. I realized that if I truly valued my own work and self-respect, I couldn't continue this toxic relationship, even with my own family. It was in that moment I decided to cut ties for good. Months passed after that decision. One day, I received an unexpected call from Linda. When I didn't answer, she persistently left messages, urging me to pick up. Reluctantly, I finally answered. "Did you pay my tuition properly?" Linda's voice carried a mixture of urgency and entitlement. I responded calmly. "I paid the donation and the entrance fee before you enrolled. What about this year's tuition?" "The university is asking for it urgently," she replied. "I don't know anything about that," I said. Even over the phone, I could sense Linda's discomfort. Indeed, I had drained my savings to cover her initial costs, the entrance fee, donation, and tuition for her first year. Those expenses had almost depleted my finances at the time, and I'd planned to pay subsequent fees as they came due. But after the incident at the end of the year, it was inconceivable that they would expect me to continue supporting Linda, especially after being told not to come home. "I paid the donation because I wanted to support you," I said firmly. "Didn't Mom and Dad send you to an out-of-state private university because they could afford the tuition? Or did they do it knowing they didn't have the money?" "That's not it," Linda stammered. "I have wealthy friends, so there are other expenses besides tuition and living costs. Mom and Dad somehow managed those, but now they don't have the money for tuition. That's why they told me to contact you." It all made sense. My parents had likely counted on my financial support from the start, especially after I advanced in my career. I had moved to a major design firm, where my skills were recognized, and my salary had increased significantly, while I had saved diligently. My support for Linda was meant to be temporary, not a permanent obligation. From the sound of it, the savings meant for her education had been squandered on her leisure activities. Despite this, I no longer had the emotional capacity to forgive. Helping with the tuition wouldn't have been financially difficult, but I refused. A few days later, my parents called, demanding I pay Linda's tuition. Their accusatory tone only deepened my resentment. It was clear that they didn't see me as part of the family, only as a source of money. Their lack of respect and consultation made it impossible for me to comply. Linda began calling almost daily. Her messages were filled with self-centered pleas. "Please pay the tuition. If you don't, I'll be expelled. Scholarships and part-time jobs aren't enough. It would be a waste if someone as promising as me had to leave school. I'll pay you back when I start working. Just help me. As family." She even left absurd messages like, "If you're upset because they told you not to come home, I can try persuading Mom and Dad." I saved her messages in a separate file, then deleted everything else and blocked her number. No one deserves to be treated as a doormat just because they're family. After that, I completely cut off communication with them. A relative later told me that Linda managed to secure scholarships and loans to cover her second year's tuition. However, without financial support for living expenses, she had to work part-time. Balancing work with her studies proved too difficult, and she ended up failing several courses. Eventually, she dropped out of university altogether. With no other options, Linda returned to live with our parents. but with their finances drained, there was no money to consider transferring her to another school. She didn't seek work locally either. Instead, she became reclusive, spending her days immersed in video games and lashing out at night in fits of stress. A friend who lived nearby later told me that the sounds of family arguments could be heard regularly from their house. My parents, once so proud of Linda, seemed powerless to confront her. As time went on, things only worsened. My father, under immense stress, caused a scandal while commuting to work. He was accused of groping a woman on the train, and though the case was settled without charges, he resigned in shame. My mother, who had little work experience, struggled to find a job that could sustain the family. They occasionally tried to contact me through relatives, but their messages were always the same, demanding and unapologetic. Eventually, even the relatives lost patience. "We'll handle it here, don't worry," they told me, cutting off any further attempts at communication. I heard through the grapevine that Linda and my father, both unemployed, were living in near destitution. My mother, frustrated and overwhelmed, had disappeared entirely, leaving them to fend for themselves. Without any goodwill left in the neighborhood, help from others was non-existent. Meanwhile, my life had taken a different path. My career as a designer flourished. I was invited to join a major project that would leave my name known in the industry. With the project wrapping up and my savings secure, I decided to pursue a long-held dream, taking university entrance exams. Now, I plan to study business management, with the goal of going independent in the future. For the first time in years, my heart is racing with excitement for the challenges ahead.
Hello, my name is Juniper, and I'm 37 years old. I never thought I'd have a story like this to share, but here it is. Get ready, everyone, because it's quite a ride. One sunny afternoon, my in-laws, Margaret and Julian, came to our house after a long-awaited vacation. They had always wanted to visit America, and I was happy to have them stay with us. Since they lived in France, we didn't get to see them often. From the times we did spend together at family reunions and chatting online, I thought everything was fine between us. But I was wrong. Without me knowing, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were planning something bad to hurt my daughter and me, and I didn't realize it for a long time. I had no idea their visit would uncover a hidden layer of bitterness and hostility behind their friendly appearance. "How are you?" "I'm good, Grandma." "Hi, Grandpa." "How was your flight?" "It was tiring." "I'm really exhausted. I need a nap." "Not before you have some refreshments first." "Ah, Juniper, you spoil me." "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Dad. I'm glad to see you're doing well." Yes, my son. We made it. Thank God." "Hey, speak English, you two. We want to be part of the conversation too. This is just your cue to brush up on some French, dear. From this conversation, you'd think we were just a big, happy family." "I thought so too. But what happened next will make you rethink those overly nice family members you have. You see, if it wasn't clear before, I'm married into a French family, taking on a new culture and language with my husband, Nicholas. While I hadn't become fluent in French, I knew enough to sense when something was wrong. Margaret and Julian always acted warm and loving when Nicholas was around, hiding their true feelings about me and my daughter, Ashley. I began to see their true colors when my husband went to work. As a housewife, I spent most of my days at home, taking care of our household and family. With my in-laws visiting, I made sure to be home so we could catch up. Ashley had just finished her freshman year of university and was home for the summer, so she and I finally had time to spend with our relatives. I hoped for a joyful and harmonious time together, filled with games, laughter, and truly getting to know each other better. At first, everything seemed fine, but as the days went by, I noticed a strange pattern. My in-laws started speaking exclusively in French, deliberately excluding Ashley and me. We tried to be polite and didn't say anything out of respect. One day, Ashley asked, "Mom, why are they always talking in French now?" "Oh, sweetheart, it's okay. That's the language they're most comfortable with, so we need to be understanding." "I get that, but it's happening all the time now. I thought we'd get to hang out with them and have a great time together." "We will, sweetie, we will. Let's just give them time to adjust to America. It must be a lot for them to handle. Okay. It'll get better. I know it will. So Ashley and I dismissed it as just a harmless quirk. But as days turned into weeks and their conversations grew harsh whenever I entered the room, my suspicions deepened. It became clear they were intentionally isolating us, keeping secrets within their private French exchanges. Ashley grew more and more curious about their behavior, feeling hurt because she really wanted to connect with her cool French grandparents, but they were making it very difficult. In an attempt to bring us closer together and bridge the gap that was forming, one day I proposed we play a game. The rules are simple. We'll go around telling each other 2 truths and 1 lie, and the rest of us will guess which one is the lie. Oh, that sounds fun, and it would be a good way to get to know each other. To our surprise, both Margaret and Julian didn't seem excited about the game. They looked bored and slightly irritated, sensing their discomfort and trying to be a good host. I decided to scrap the idea and ask them what they would like to do instead. I would like to drink some tea and chat with my husband. Oh, okay. Is it okay if Mom and I join? No. His outburst shocked us. But he quickly recovered. I mean, no, my dear. We just would like to enjoy a quiet afternoon. Okay, we understand. We're older, and these kinds of games may not be our thing. But you two never talk to us. You're always speaking in French. How dare you talk to us like this? So disrespectful. Were you raised on a farm? How dare you speak to my daughter this way? She's just a kid. She wants to hang out with you guys, but you're making it difficult. How can you say something so mean? Whatever. Let's go, Julian. Julian and Margaret stood up from the table, speaking loudly in French, not bothering to hide their words. I couldn't understand exactly what they were saying, but from their tone and body language, it was clear they were talking about us. And it wasn't nice. I felt too embarrassed to tell Nicholas when he came home that evening. I was afraid he would notice the tension at dinner. To our surprise, both Margaret and Julian were suddenly very nice to us, as if nothing had happened earlier. We were chatting as if we were one big happy family, but Ashley and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. Days later, fueled by curiosity and feeling betrayed, I decided to take action. While Margaret and Julian chatted in the living room, I discreetly reached for my phone and hit record. With shaking hands, I captured their voices and words, hoping to uncover the truth hidden in their secret conversations. After successfully recording their voices, I gained confidence. One day turned into 2, then 3, then 4, and soon I had collected recordings of their conversations spanning a week. I carefully gathered evidence, documenting whenever they spoke. I only had basic knowledge of French, so I couldn't understand everything they said. But as I listened repeatedly, I caught some rude words. I was afraid of what I might find if I translated everything, but I knew I had to uncover the truth. Luckily, I had a friend who spoke French. Camille was from Senegal and moved to the States as a baby. Although she grew up as an American, her immigrant parents made sure she could still speak her native language. She was the perfect person to help me decipher the information. I called her and asked her to come over. Once she arrived, I took her to the back of the house so Margaret and Julian wouldn't see her. Camille and I found a moment alone outside to talk. I poured my heart out to her, sharing all the strange behavior and my growing suspicions. Camille was incredibly supportive, promising to help me uncover the truth. From what you're saying, it sounds like they're talking about some shady stuff. But don't worry, I'll do my best to help. Thanks, love. You're a lifesaver. Just being a best friend. As I played the audio for Camille, her face went pale, and she started trembling. Camille, what's wrong? I can't breathe. Panic attack. She was gasping loudly for air, and I started to feel scared too. I never expected her to be so overwhelmed by what she heard. Fear gripped me as I tried to calm her down, doing my best to provide comfort. I hurried inside to get a glass of water and helped her lie down in the cool shade to calm down. I served her and massaged her skin until her attack subsided. Thankfully, I managed to help her without raising suspicion from Margaret and Julian, who were probably still gossiping inside. Ashley happened to be near her bedroom window and overheard the commotion. Worried, she rushed downstairs to check on us. I explained what happened, telling her that I secretly recorded her grandparents and it was so disturbing that it caused Camille to have a panic attack. We were both horrified by what we might uncover when Camille was ready to talk. Once she had fully recovered and was safe in my bedroom with Ashley, Camille apologized for her reaction. Don't you dare apologize. You did nothing wrong. What matters is that you're safe now. Julian and Margaret didn't see you. They're outside in the front lawn, so Ashley and I managed to bring you upstairs. You really scared us, Camille, but I'm relieved you're okay. I probably should have warned you about my panic and anxiety attacks, but I wasn't expecting to hear such awful information. Tell us, Camille, what were they saying? Camille took a deep breath and a sip of water before relaying what she heard on the recordings. Juniper, Ashley, there's no easy way to say this. It seems Margaret and Julian want to. They want to sell Ashley on the black market to some really awful people. Both Ashley's and my jaws dropped. We were shocked. What on earth? That's not all. They said they wanted to sell you to Juniper. They planned to fake your deaths in a car accident and make it look like your body's burned up in flames so there's no evidence. They thought they'd make a lot of money from Ashley because she's young. I feel sick. They were so cold and heartless about everything, you guys. Like I didn't care at all that they were going to sell you to such twisted people. That's why I had a panic attack. I'd never heard someone talk so openly about such a terrible crime. You can take a break if you need to, both of you. It's a lot to handle. Why are you crying? Aren't you sick, Mom? Of course I am, but right now, I'm just angry. They threatened to hurt you, Ashley, and for that, I will never forgive them. They said more awful things, but I'll spare us the details, at least for now. Camille, Ashley, and I felt extremely scared and sick. We couldn't believe we'd been living with criminals for a month. I was filled with rage. I wanted to confront them, but Camille stopped me. June, I understand you're upset, but you can't go down there and confront them. What do you mean? They threatened my daughter's life. I know, Juniper. I just don't think it's safe for you to confront them without a plan. You live with these people. Who knows what they might do if they feel threatened? You're right. We have an advantage because we know their plans. We can't lose that. So what's the plan? We're getting out of here. What? Yes. Pack your essentials and lock your door, just in case. I'll do the same. Camille, help Ashley while I call Nicholas. Okay, we'll be back when we're ready. Once they left the room, I couldn't hold back my tears. I felt so overwhelmed by everything I had heard, but I was relieved to know the truth, even if it was painful. I called Nicholas and told him everything. I explained how his parents had been treating us, the rude outburst towards Ashley, and the recordings with Camille's translations. I'm sure you'll understand what they mean. Camille didn't give all the details, but enough to know we're not safe here. I'm taking Ashley to Camille's house after I finish packing, but I had to tell you everything. I know it's a lot to take in. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about the other stuff. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to upset you. Let me listen to the audio, okay? I'll get back to you. We ended the call, and I continued packing, keeping an eye on the window to see if Margaret and Julian were still outside. When I finished packing, Camille and Ashley returned to my room. Just then, I received a call from Nicholas. He sounded extremely upset. Who wouldn't be after finding out their parents were criminals? He said we needed to leave immediately and that he'd meet us at Camille's place. We quietly got into the car parked in the garage and drove off. Margaret and Julian saw us leaving and called me, but I ignored the phone. Once we arrived at Camille's house, I called the police and directed them to Margaret and Julian's house. 30 minutes later, Nicholas arrived at Camille's place. We hugged and cried for a while Camille updated us on the police raid. The police had arrested Margaret and Julian. Nicholas explained that before coming to Camille's, he had stopped at the police station to give them the evidence I had sent digitally. With the evidence, it was easier for the police to handle the case. Although we weren't there to see it, I'm sure Margaret and Julian were shocked as the police stormed into our home. They were swiftly arrested due to the serious crimes they were accused of. The once proud couple now stood exposed as the criminals they truly were. News of their arrest quickly spread throughout the community, causing shock and disbelief among our acquaintances and neighbors. It was surreal to experience such a dramatic event in our ordinary lives. The revelation of their involvement in human trafficking shocked the town, destroying the image of respectability they had carefully crafted over the years. The legal proceedings were difficult, but the evidence I gathered helped build a strong case against them. Their actions were exposed in court, leaving no doubt about their guilt. The jury, horrified by their crimes, unanimously found them guilty on multiple charges related to human trafficking and conspiracy. As the judge delivered the verdict, there was a sense of relief and satisfaction in the courtroom. Margaret and Julian, once respected by Nicholas, Ashley, and me, now faced the consequences of their actions. They were sentenced to long prison terms and would also face trial in France, where laws regarding such crimes are stricter. This meant we wouldn't see them for a long time, and given their ages, they would likely spend the rest of their lives behind bars. They were considered a serious threat to our family, and their sentences ensured they would be kept away from society. Good riddance. Their arrest and conviction made national news, serving as a warning to others who thought they could commit such crimes without consequences. It was a victory for justice and a reminder that everyone is accountable under the law. While the legal process dealt with their crimes, Ashley, Nicholas, and I focused on healing and rebuilding our lives. The betrayal by Margaret and Julian left lasting scars, especially for Nicholas. But we stood together, supporting each other as we navigated the aftermath of their arrest and worked to overcome the trauma we had endured. Our bond grew stronger through it all. Ashley, how are you feeling these days? You've shown incredible strength through everything, I asked, breaking the heavy silence that filled the room. Ashley took a moment to gather her thoughts before responding, her eyes reflecting a mixture of resilience and vulnerability. Honestly, Mom, some days are still really tough. But overall, I'm feeling better. Therapy has helped a lot, and expressing myself through art has been therapeutic. I still have moments of fear and doubt, but I'm learning to cope with them. Nicholas reached out, gently squeezing Ashley's hand in support. We're so proud of you, Ashley. You've handled this with such courage and grace. Remember, we're always here for you, no matter what. I nodded in agreement, feeling a swell of pride and love for my daughter. Yes, Ashley, we're here to support you every step of the way. We've come a long way, but there's still healing to be done. Let's continue to lean on each other and move forward together. With renewed determination and a shared sense of resilience, we embraced the challenges ahead, knowing that as a family, we could overcome anything. It hasn't been easy, Mom, but I'm making progress. Art has become my safe place, a way to express and let go of the pain, and therapy is helping me see things differently and trust again. We're so proud of you, Ashley. Your strength inspires us every day. We're here for you always. That's right, sweetheart. We're in this together, supporting and lifting each other up as we move forward. We've come a long way, and our future looks brighter. Thank you both. I don't know where I'd be without your love and support. We've faced challenges, but we've grown stronger. Now we have the chance to take back our lives and make a positive difference. Absolutely, my love. We've faced the darkest of times, but we've emerged stronger than ever. We won't let others' actions define us. Together, we'll build a future full of love, happiness, and fulfillment. We're a family, unbreakable. We've proven that. Let's keep supporting each other, healing, and building the life we deserve. We're stronger than ever, and will embrace every opportunity. The conversation was filled with a mix of emotions, from past pain to hopeful anticipation. As we continued our journey, we found comfort in each other, knowing we could overcome anything together and create a life of love and joy. I'm Delilah, and tonight, like most nights since arriving in Monte Carlo, I found myself sitting alone at a small cafe near the bustling casino square. It's a far cry from the extravagant life I was born into, but after graduating from a prestigious college in New York, I craved something simple, something real. My father owns what feels like half the world: luxury hotels, tech firms, you name it. Yet I chose to use my mother's last name, a way to keep my distance from the glare of his empire. The evening air was cooling when you walked in. Julian looked like he belonged here, moving with the kind of ease that only comes with a tailored suit that probably costs more than my monthly rent. Without asking, he pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, already making himself comfortable. I barely glanced up. "Looks like you're already sitting," I replied coolly. He laughed, smooth and practiced. "I'm Julian. And you are?" "Delilah?" I met his gaze for a moment, sizing him up. He was polished, a little too perfect for my usual taste, but undeniably attractive. "So, Delilah," he continued, leaning back, "what brings someone like you here? Alone?" "Just enjoying my coffee," I answered vaguely, not in the mood to share. "And you?" He shrugged, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "I could say business, but I'd be lying. Let's just say I'm here for something interesting, and it looks like I might found it." His gaze lingered, steady and confident. I raised an eyebrow. "Hope the coffee lives up to your expectations then." He smiled, not breaking eye contact. "Something tells me it already has." I wasn't here for a fling, and I didn't intend to entertain anyone's lines. Look, I'm not one of those girls who falls for charming strangers. If that's what you're after, you're wasting your time. Julian leaned back, an amused expression crossing his face. "Who says I'm playing a game?" "Experience," I said bluntly. "You sit down uninvited, drop a line. What, expect a number or a date?" He chuckled, genuinely this time. "You're tough. I like that. I'm not looking for a number, just a conversation. But if it's too much, just say the word and I'll disappear." I hesitated. Monte Carlo could be beautiful, but it was often lonely too. "Conversation's fine," I said, keeping it casual. To my surprise, talking with Julian was easy. He didn't try to impress me with wealth or connections. He was comfortable, and as the evening wore on, I found myself genuinely enjoying his company. Eventually, as the night began to wind down, I stood to leave. "Well, Julian," I said, "this was unexpectedly pleasant." He grinned, catching my surprise. "Surprised yourself, huh?" "Maybe just a little," I admitted. "Good night, Julian." "Good night, Delilah," he replied, his gaze lingering as I walked away. For the first time, the nights here didn't feel so solitary. In the following days, Julian seemed to appear wherever I was, as if drawn to the same places. Surprisingly, his persistence wasn't annoying. It was as if he truly enjoyed my company. One evening, he sat beside me on a quiet terrace overlooking the sea, bringing 3 coffees just in case he guessed wrong. "If I'm wrong, I'll drink both," he joked, handing me a cup. "Good guess," I replied with a smile. We settled into a comfortable rhythm, sharing stories about favorite movies, debating over the best James Bond he swore by Daniel Craig while I was a Sean Connery fan, and wandering through the local markets. Julian had a way of making me laugh, and each day Monte Carlo felt a little less like a stop on my journey and a little more like home. One afternoon, he suddenly turned serious. "Delilah, I know I'm just some guy you met at a cafe, but these past weeks have been, I don't know, different, better, because of you." I stopped, not sure how to respond. "Julian, I like spending time with you, I really do. But this is just a break for me. I'm not looking for complications." He nodded, his face softening. "No pressure. Just, no, I'm here, okay. I think you're pretty amazing." Days turned into weeks, and my time in Monte Carlo was nearing its end. Julian and I had drifted into late-night dinners and early morning walks, something I never anticipated under the Mediterranean stars. Then one evening, Julian surprised me. "Come back with me," he said, hope filling his voice. "There's a position at my company back in the States. I know it's sudden, but I just think it could be great." The idea was insane, completely out of character for me, yet part of me was tempted by the adventure or the chance to see where this could lead. Just as I was considering the possibility, my father showed up unannounced, his laughter echoing through the room as he stepped into my space like he owned it. Well, Delilah, hiding out in plain sight, are we?" he chuckled, enveloping me in a hug that left me breathless. "Tell me about this decision. This guy must be something special for you to consider moving like this." I sighed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. "His name's Julian, and he doesn't know about all of this." I gestured around me, acknowledging the opulence I'd spent my life trying to keep hidden from the people who mattered. My dad's expression turned serious. "You can't keep that a secret forever, Delilah. If he's going to be part of your life, he deserves to know who you really are." "I know, Dad," I replied quietly. "I just want to be sure about him before I complicate things." He ruffled my hair, a playful gesture that made me feel like a kid again. "Just remember, if you ever need anything, I'm only a call away. And don't forget, I've got eyes everywhere," he added with a wink. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Julian and I grew closer, though he sensed I was holding back. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, He looked at me, his gaze gentle but insistent. "When do you think I'll get to meet your family?" he asked. "I feel like I'm missing a big part of you." My heart raced. I wasn't ready to reveal the truth, the tangled web of wealth and expectations that came with my last name. "Well, my mom passed away years ago, and my dad, he's just a regular guy," I said, dodging the details. Julian reached for my hand. "Whenever you're ready, I'd like to meet him. Family's important." For the first time, I began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was ready to share my world with him. Nodded, grateful for his understanding, even though I wasn't sure how I'd ever bridge the gap between Julian and my father. My dad's world was one I wasn't ready to introduce Julian to, not yet. As time went on, life with Julian flowed in ways I hadn't anticipated. We were blending our lives together effortlessly. My new job at his company was going smoothly, and our relationship was deepening every day. It felt like we were building towards something significant, though I didn't realize how big until the moment arrived. It was an ordinary evening in Julian's cozy, upscale apartment with a view of the city skyline. We had just finished a casual takeout dinner, lounging on the couch as a documentary about ocean life played softly in the background. Julian suddenly turned to me, his expression surprisingly serious. He took my hand, and my heart quickened. "Delilah," he began, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and what I want for our future together." I nodded, feeling my mouth go dry, waiting for him to continue. "I love you, Delilah," he said, his words warm and sincere. "I love everything about you, and I can't imagine my life without you." He paused, looking nervous, a vulnerability I hadn't expected, which made me feel a little braver. "I want to be with you, always. Will you marry me?" No grand gesture, no ring, just a simple, genuine question that was so unmistakably Julian. "Yes," I answered, the word rushing out of me, almost a sigh of relief. "Yes, I will." Julian's smile spread wide, and he pulled me into a tight hug. The rest of the evening was a blur of excitement and dreaming about our future together. It felt thrilling, a little overwhelming, but it was so undeniably right. The next challenge was telling my dad. I expected him to be happy, but his reaction was far more cautious than I hoped. "Delilah, you know I want nothing but your happiness," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "But are you sure about this? It's all happening so fast." "I'm sure, Dad. He's a great guy, you'll see." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. He sighed, his eyes searching mine. "All right, but promise me one thing." He paused. "A prenuptial agreement, just to be safe." The word didn't intimidate me. It was practical, especially given our situations. "Of course, Dad. We'll handle it." "That's good," he replied, adding after a pause, "But Delilah, I won't be at the wedding. I don't want to spoil your story of being a simple girl." Next, I met Julian's mother, whose reception was ice cold from the start. Over dinner at their family home, she looked at me with a chilling gaze. "Julian, are you sure about this girl?" she asked bluntly. "She doesn't seem like she's a fit for our family." Julian tried to smooth things over, but his mother was adamant. "A prenuptial agreement is non-negotiable," she said firmly. I nodded without hesitation, understanding that agreeing would ease some of the tension. "Absolutely, I wouldn't have it any other way." Later, we met with a lawyer to finalize the agreement. Despite these early challenges, our wedding in the Maldives was breathtaking. Standing beside Julian with the ocean waves lapping at the shore and sand under our feet, I felt a rush of hope. It felt like it was just the two of us, our love and a future we were ready to shape together. Settling into married life began beautifully. We moved into a spacious new house, meant to be the foundation of our dream life together. I threw myself back into work, determined to prove I was more than just the boss's wife. My role was challenging, but now, with new expectations, it felt even more significant. I wasn't just managing projects. I was part of decision-making, and Julian seemed proud, at first. But as my projects succeeded, bringing in significant profits and bolstering the company's reputation, I sensed a shift in Julian. At first, it was a passing remark, a subtle comment. Then one evening, over dinner, he brought it up. "Delilah, you're doing great at work. Maybe too great," he said, not meeting my eyes. Confused, I looked at him. "What do you mean? Isn't that good for the company?" "It is," he admitted, pushing his food around. "But you know, the guys are starting to say it's becoming the Delilah show over there." I was taken aback. Isn't that a bit unfair? I thought you'd be happy with our success. I am, he replied, though he didn't sound it. But it's just a lot. Everyone's talking about you, how you handle things, and it makes me wonder where I stand. That conversation marked a turning point. Julian's once supportive attitude began to feel clouded with jealousy and resentment. I couldn't understand it. Wasn't he the one who'd encouraged me to step up? The tension only grew when his mother stayed with us, bringing the traditional mindset I'd never had to contend with. She would casually remark about my work, suggesting that a wife's place was more at home. You're always at the office, Delilah. When do you find time to care for your husband? She would say. I tried to ignore it, hoping to keep the peace, but her words added to the distance between Julian and me. One evening, Julian came home, his expression set and unreadable. Delilah, he said, his tone firm. I think it's best if you leave the company. We need to focus on our family, and it seems like your role there is just causing too much tension. His words felt like a punch. Leave the company? But why? I've worked so hard, Julian. It's for the best, he replied coldly. You can focus on the house now, maybe start that garden you've always talked about, he added dismissively, as if my career was a mere hobby. The next day, I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain if I should let go of everything I'd built, just to keep the peace in our fragile marriage. I discovered that Julian had fired our entire household staff, the housekeepers, cooks, and even the horticulturist. It's all on you now, he said, almost as if he were punishing me. You wanted to be more involved at home. Here's your chance. His words were harsh, and though I wasn't afraid of housework, the way he dumped this on me felt deeply unfair. This wasn't the loving, supportive man I had married. This was someone controlling and intolerant, a stranger. Adding to the tension, Julian's mother, who was staying with us, seemed to enjoy this turn of events. It's good for a wife to focus on her home, she would say, smile barely concealing a smirk whenever Julian talked about my new role as a full-time housewife. Each day, I tried to adjust, but a sense of shame grew within me, shame that I hadn't seen this coming, and a quiet, painful shame that maybe my father had been right about Julian all along. When Julian suggested a trip to Monte Carlo to rekindle our strained relationship, I felt hesitant yet hopeful. But that hope was quickly dashed when his mother announced she would be coming along. It's been ages since I traveled, she declared, her words leaving no room for disagreement. Julian welcomed her enthusiastically, without a single thought for my feelings. We rented a small house in Monte Carlo, charming but costly. What was meant to be a retreat quickly became a prison. From the moment we arrived, Julian and his mother treated the city as their playground, renting luxury cars, visiting exclusive boutiques, and dining at the finest restaurants. Meanwhile, I was left behind to manage the household, preparing meals and cleaning up after their daily excursions. They demanded home-cooked meals, turning me into a servant in our holiday home. As the days went by, Julian's mother's remarks became sharper, her barbs cloaked in smiles. Really, Delilah, living off someone else's dime. Must be quite the life, huh? She sneered, each word landing like a slap. Julian never defended me. Instead, he laughed along with her, and each chuckle felt like a betrayal, cracking the fragile remnants of our bond. One evening, as we passed a grand old hotel, Julian's mother looked at it with envy. Imagine owning a place like that, she muttered, her voice dripping with longing. Later that night, over dinner, she took another jab at me, this time loudly instructing the waiter, for Delilah, just the cheapest dish. No need to spoil her with luxuries she doesn't deserve. Julian laughed, agreeing, good call, Mom. Let's not go overboard. Their words stung. I stood up abruptly, the scrape of my chair loud against the marble floor. I won't stand for this anymore, I said, my voice trembling yet firm. I'm divorcing you, Julian. As I walked away, Julian and his mother followed, shouting insults that echoed through the night. Look at her, a beggar, unworthy of my son. His mother jeered. My heart pounded, but before I could escape, Julian caught up, grabbed my purse, and sneered, This is my money, Delilah. Get out however you can. With a violent yank, he tore the purse from my shoulder, leaving me stunned and shaken. His mother's cruel laughter followed as she added, Maybe you'll learn to beg here in Monte Carlo. Just then, as their laughter echoed down the street, fate intervened. We stood in front of the grand hotel Julian's mother had envied earlier. The gates opened, and a guard approached, his expression lighting up as he recognized me. Miss Harris, he called, his tone respectful. "Your father mentioned you might stop by. Please, this way. The best room is always reserved for you." Julian and his mother froze, their smug expressions vanishing as they realized my connection to the hotel. His mother stammered, "Harris. As in billionaire Harris." Ignoring their shock, I walked toward the hotel with the guard, each step a quiet declaration of my independence. Julian's desperate voice called after me, "Please, Delilah, I didn't mean it." And his mother added with forced cheer, "Perhaps we could come in for a drink, at least?" Without a backward glance, I stepped inside, the heavy doors closing firmly behind me, symbolizing the end of my old life. Back in the US, I faced Julian in court. He tried to claim my bonuses from the multi-million-dollar deals I had closed at his company. But my attorney revealed every unpaid bonus, bringing to light Julian's betrayal in the business we'd built together. In the end, the court awarded me $7 million. Outside, Julian made one last desperate plea. "Delilah, everyone's laughing at me. Can we start over?" Once, those words might have stirred pity. Now, I saw clearly. "You only missed the money, Julian," I said, my voice firm. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice about whom you listen to." Without waiting for a response, I walked away, my heels clicking on the courthouse steps, each step a testament to my strength. Back home, my father was waiting. The silence between us felt heavy, filled with the words I'd kept to myself. Finally, I spoke. "Dad, I should have listened to you." He wrapped me in a warm embrace, his voice gentle. "You had to learn for yourself. Now you know, and that's what matters." Late into the night, we talked about mistakes, lessons, and new beginnings. Inspired, I began planning my next chapter. With the skills I'd gained and the resources I now had, I started my own business. The journey was challenging, but each step confirmed that I was on the right path. Sitting in my new office, looking over the bustling city, I realized how far I had come, from a trapped wife in a broken marriage to a confident businesswoman. Every hardship had made me stronger, and now, the future was mine to shape.
Saying that I was content with my husband, Nick, would be an immense understatement. I had married the love of my life, and even my mother-in-law, who lived with us, was wonderful. Despite Nick's busy schedule as a manager, he always made time for me, and my relationship with my mother-in-law was smooth. One day, while discussing inheritance matters with my mother-in-law, I mentioned that I had received my parents' shares, which amounted to a significant sum. Her reaction was unexpected. She grew silent and questioned why I wanted it so early. I explained it was Nick's wish for me to have it now. This revelation seemed to disturb her, and she suggested I review our prenuptial agreement. Confused, I confronted Nick, who tried to brush off the situation. However, when I pressed him further, his demeanor shifted, and I sensed a hint of panic in his voice. Determined to unravel the truth, I sought an explanation from my mother-in-law. Reluctantly, she confessed that she had discovered documents in Nick's home office outlining a prenup that significantly favored him, contrary to what I had signed. Shocked, I confronted Nick, who promised to show me the prenup the next day. But when he failed to produce it, my suspicions deepened. During his absence on a business trip, I couldn't shake off my suspicions. Driven by a desire for clarity, I decided to search his office discreetly. After days of searching, I finally found our prenuptial agreement hidden away, raising more questions than answers. Rage coursed through me as I pored over the document. According to this new version of our prenup, most of my properties would be his in the event of a divorce. I was utterly incredulous. The prenup I had signed with Nick, the one my lawyer and I had carefully reviewed, was nothing like this. It had outlined fair terms, where we retained rights to our personal properties and shares. Nick had seemed completely fine with it. I couldn't fathom how he had orchestrated this deceit behind my back. I immediately called my lawyer from back then, hoping for a solution. However, he seemed as clueless as I was, leaving me feeling utterly hopeless. Frustration and stress consumed me. Aimlessly pacing around the office, I stumbled upon a necklace in one of the drawers, unmistakably Molly's. a custom design I had gifted her for her birthday. My heart plummeted. Trying not to jump to conclusions, I called her. She explained she was visiting her parents and wouldn't be back for 2 days. I hung up and rushed to her house, my dread escalating as I saw Nick's shoes next to hers at the door. Inside, I confronted Molly, my voice laced with fury, demanding Nick to reveal himself. Both of them stood before me, guilt etched across their faces. They began to apologize, but their insincerity was palpable. My husband and my best friend desperately spun excuses, their lies struggling to find any semblance of believability. I waited until their feeble attempts to cover up their betrayal ceased. Holding the prenuptial agreement in my trembling hands, I confronted them. I demanded an explanation from Nick, his initial shock quickly transforming into composed denial. He insisted that the document I held was the original one. Refusing to be deceived again, I stood my ground, threatening legal action against him for altering the prenup. Nick scoffed, dismissing my threats, claiming there was no proof of the fabricated version. Realizing I needed legal expertise, I resolved to find a knowledgeable attorney to fight back. My gaze shifted to Molly, who attempted to leave discreetly. I erupted in fury, accusing her of betrayal. In a moment of satisfaction, I slapped Nick hard. But he retaliated, blaming me for his deceitful plans. He asserted he intended to divorce me while preserving my feelings by keeping everything else intact. His manipulative words twisted the truth, making me question my own judgment. The betrayal cut deep. These were two of the people I trusted most, and their collusion left me feeling nauseous. As I processed the shock, Molly's son's cries echoed from another room. Dread consumed me as I confronted Molly, asking if Nick was the baby's father. Neither of them could meet my eyes, confirming my worst fears. A year ago, when Molly announced her pregnancy, I had supported her unconditionally. Nick had been there for her too, seemingly out of kindness. Now the pieces fell into place, revealing a devastating truth. Returning home, uncontrollable tears welled up. I found solace in the embrace of my mother-in-law, who stood by me as I poured out my heart. Sharing the entire ordeal with her, I realized the depth of the betrayal. I contemplated whether delving into the prenup had been worth it. Unearthing this web of deceit had shattered my world, leaving me questioning everything. I find myself utterly lost, unsure of how to proceed or whom to trust. It has become incredibly difficult to place my faith in people. I am immensely thankful for the suggestions and advice many of you have given me. Nick didn't return home for an entire week, and truthfully, it was probably for the best. Both my mother-in-law and I were prepared to kick him out if he did. Every day, I grew more restless, haunted by thoughts of the prenuptial agreement. Taking your advice to heart, I reached out to a lawyer who happened to be Molly's ex and one of the most promising up-and-coming attorneys I knew. He hadn't been available when we drafted the prenup, or I certainly would have chosen him. The lawyer explained the complexities of the situation, suggesting various ways to resolve it. Ultimately, he proposed that convincing Nick to nullify the prenup was the best course of action. However, when I confronted Nick in his office, his response was unexpected. He professed his love for Molly and his desire to provide for their child. I was dumbfounded. If he cared so deeply for them, why did he need my money? My persistence in questioning him only led to threats. He even went as far as to threaten my job, exploiting his connections with my boss, who happened to be his close friend. In that moment, it was as if I didn't recognize him anymore. He had transformed into someone manipulative and cunning. I realized that divorcing him would mean losing most of my property, a prospect that left me feeling trapped. While I wasn't well versed in the legal intricacies, my lawyer mentioned that the agreement might be considered invalid if the property division was excessively unfair. Yet the agreement specified most of my properties, albeit with a certain entitlement for me. Despite this, it still felt profoundly unjust, even if it might appear ordinary in a courtroom setting. For now, I chose to back down, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Several days later, I received a call from Nick's secretary, requesting a meeting. We met at a cafe, where she wasted no time getting to the point. Nick was involved with my boss, and he had threatened me using her as leverage. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Her unwarranted hostility towards me finally made sense. It was incomprehensible to believe that he was juggling multiple relationships simultaneously. Fortunately, the secretary provided me with photos as evidence of their secret affair. Armed with proof, I confronted Nick immediately. His face paled, sweat beading on his forehead. He lashed out, blaming me for ruining his life. But I cut him off, threatening to show the photos to Molly unless he agreed to modify the prenuptial agreement. Faced with no other choice, he begrudgingly complied, though his fury was palpable. In the following week, we met to revise our prenup agreement. Nick seethed with anger throughout the process, his rage evident to anyone present. When Molly saw her ex with me, she seemed genuinely surprised. Clearly, she hadn't anticipated seeing him after breaking things off upon learning about her pregnancy. After the prenup was successfully modified, I wasted no time. I filed for divorce, ending the toxic relationship that had left me broken and betrayed. Thank you, everyone, for your supportive messages. I want to share an update with you all. I've purchased an apartment and regained ownership of all my properties. The alimony was eliminated, a decision we both agreed upon. Most importantly, I've finally separated from Nick, and it feels liberating. He was involved with Molly for a while, but their relationship soared after she discovered him with my boss. In the aftermath, I resigned from my job and found a better position at a different company. On a personal note, I've started a relationship with my lawyer, Molly, and things are going quite well. It seems that karma works its magic after all. Regarding my relationship with Chris's children, Eric, 17, and Alice, 15, it has always been respectful and caring. While they refer to me as their mother figure to others, they prefer not to use the title mom when we talk privately or in front of other relatives. I've never insisted on the label, valuing our bond more than a title. However, this became an issue with my mother-in-law. She persistently pressured me, believing I should be called Mom by the kids. Despite my attempts to explain the distinction between being a mother figure and the title itself, she continued to push the matter aggressively. In a recent confrontation, my husband stood up for me, asserting that his mother's behavior amounted to harassment. I supported him and asked her to respect the children's choice in how they address me. Unfortunately, this stance led to criticism from other family members, friends, and even some acquaintances who believe we should comply with my mother-in-law's wishes to maintain family harmony. Am I in the wrong for not insisting that my stepchildren call me Mom, and for not agreeing with my mother-in-law's demands? I can't believe your mother-in-law is suggesting that you should force your stepchildren into a specific parental relationship dynamic. It's almost laughable how she thinks you should have adopted them immediately after marriage and changed their last names to yours. The sarcasm aside, your approach is truly commendable. The way your stepchildren address you doesn't diminish the wonderful relationship you've built with them. I wonder if your mother-in-law's reaction stems from a fear that your lack of insistence on the title means you aren't attached to the kids. However, it's crucial to understand that the children's opinions matter most. If they want to call you Mom, eventually they will, and if not, that's perfectly fine. By not pressuring them while offering unconditional love, you're doing the best thing for your relationship. You aren't their biological mother, so pushing them to address you a certain way isn't your place. The kids should have the freedom to express their preferences within the boundaries set by you and their father. If they choose to call you Mom, it should be their decision. If they prefer using your first name, that should be respected too. Frankly, it's quite odd for your mother-in-law to get so worked up about this, especially after a decade into the marriage. I wonder if there might be something else going on with her health or emotions. Regardless, you're definitely not in the wrong here. I'm 26 years old, and I'm pregnant with my first child. My husband, Harry, and I are thrilled about it. We recently announced our pregnancy during a family party. Most people were excited for us, except for my sister-in-law, Jonah. She's 34 years old and happens to be best friends with my husband's ex-wife, Elisa. Elisa and Harry had a short-lived marriage in their early 20s, and it ended due to her infidelity. I met Harry almost 3 years after his divorce, and we hit it off instantly. We're now happily married and expecting our first child. However, Joanna believes that I somehow stole her brother away from Elisa, and that Harry still has feelings for his ex. Joanna frequently brings up Elisa in conversations with me, usually when Harry isn't around. While it was initially a minor annoyance, her comments escalated after I announced my pregnancy. She started suggesting that I should name our baby Elisa if it's a girl, which really bothered me. One evening, at a party celebrating Joanna and Theo's 5th wedding anniversary, she mentioned the Elisa name suggestion again. I lost my patience and publicly revealed something no one else knew. I loudly responded to Joanna, asking her if she wanted me to name my child after her high school sweetheart, Marcus, like she named her own son. Everyone at the party was shocked, including her husband Theo, who looked stunned. I felt bad about hurting him, but I couldn't tolerate Joanna anymore. Harry and I left the party immediately without waiting to see the aftermath. I felt awful afterward, especially when Harry supported me, as he felt I did the right thing. However, his mother called and criticized me for my outburst, saying that I should apologize to Joanna and claim it was a joke. I was already upset with Joanna's comments, and Harry's mother's call made things worse. I declined to apologize and told her to pay attention to what her daughter says to others instead. She also called Harry, and they argued about the situation. She insisted she wouldn't see Harry unless we apologized to Joanna and Theo. Harry is firm about not apologizing, and I feel terrible because I know how much he values his family, and now they're not speaking to him because of what I said. I might have overreacted a little, and maybe I should just apologize and get this over with before it goes any further. What if Theo leaves Joanna? Did I ruin their marriage? Should I apologize, or am I right here? I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to see Harry upset, but I also don't think Joanna deserves my apology. Am I the a-hole here? They're getting a divorce now. Apparently, since I refused to back down from what I said, Joanna had to come clean about what had happened, as Theo wouldn't drop it. Harry's mother called us to let us know that this was all our fault and that we had ruined Joanna's life. I'm not sure how it's my fault, since I was not the one who named her son after her high school ex. But sure, whatever. I'd suggest we just apologize, but Harry said that he would rather not speak to his mother and sister than apologize for doing the right thing. Gosh, I really couldn't have asked for a better husband. I do feel bad that he's giving up contact with his family for my sake, but I'm glad that he's on the right side of things. It's been a few days since Theo decided to leave Joanna, and she's been calling us nonstop, mostly Harry, saying that he needs to leave me, and that I'm going to ruin his life. She even went to the extent of saying that Elisa is still willing to take him back, and that she'll make sure that we're never happy together if he decides to stay with me. At this point, we've decided to go no contact with them. I've already blocked her and her mother from all my social media accounts, and Harry's doing the same. He doesn't even look upset anymore, just outraged that his mother and sister are being this crazy and awful. I know there hasn't been an update for really long, but that's because of all the craziness that we've had to deal with over the past few weeks. So to fill you guys in real quick, Theo decided to file for divorce and seek full custody of their son. He moved out within a few days of their marriage anniversary and has been living with one of his friends. We've managed to keep in touch, and I even apologized to him for whatever happened. But he ended up thanking me for bringing up the truth. Apparently, he'd always suspected that the name Marcus had meant something to her since she had gone ballistic when he dared to even suggest another name and even threatened to leave him over this. That's why he had no option but to let her name their son Marcus. But now, bear with me as I provide the necessary context. I am a 26-year-old male who has always been close to my family. I used to live with my parents and older sister until I turned 18 and left for college. Growing up, I despised our hometown and longed to escape its confines. The only thing that ever brought me back was my family. They were my anchor. Even after my sister moved out, I would occasionally return and stay with her in her separate apartment whenever I visited town. We shared a deep bond, having confided in each other since childhood. However, my world shattered when my sister revealed her engagement news. What made this revelation even more painful was the identity of her fiancé, the very person who had tormented me throughout high school. Bullied felt like an understatement. He had subjected me to relentless torment, pushing me to the point of panic attacks and multiple emergency room visits. I had made official complaints against him, but he always managed to evade consequences. My parents and sister were aware of my ordeal. They tried their best to help, but the scars ran deep. The shock of my sister's engagement was overwhelming, feeling like an outright betrayal. I couldn't fathom how she could be with someone who had caused me such immense suffering. In that moment, I couldn't even look at her. I fled our parents' house, desperate to escape the suffocating grip of panic. I spent that night in a hotel, ignoring frantic calls and messages from my family. The next day, I decided to face my family, knowing they must be worried sick about me. I reassured them that I was physically fine, although emotionally shattered. My sister began to explain how she reconnected with her fiancé after returning to town. She claimed he had apologized for his past behavior, a hollow gesture considering the horrors he had put me through. What stunned me even more was the revelation that they had been together for over 3 years, a period during which she never mentioned him. I felt a surge of betrayal as I realized she had shared her life with my tormentor while keeping me in the dark. When my parents expressed their disapproval, I felt a glimmer of hope that they would understand my pain. To my relief, they sided with me, questioning my sister's judgment. She grew defensive, urging us to move on from the past, a plea I found utterly absurd given the trauma he had inflicted on me. She expected me to tolerate his presence at family gatherings, but I couldn't. I bluntly told her she couldn't marry him, regardless of how irrational or stubborn I sounded. I found it unimaginable to accept him as a part of my family. When I confronted my sister, she adamantly refused to end her engagement, dismissing our conflict as a petty feud. Her words cut deep, especially considering she knew the extent of my suffering. Realizing I couldn't change her mind, I gave her a straightforward ultimatum. She had to choose between her fiancé and me. I couldn't bear to be a part of her life if she married him. She argued that my demand was unfair, professing her love for me. I acknowledged the truth in her words, but I simply couldn't fathom having that man in our lives. In the end, she chose him, tearfully explaining that she didn't want to make this choice, but felt compelled to. I told her I loved her, but declared that she would never see me again. I wished her well and walked away. Over the years, my parents kept me updated on her life events, including her wedding and the birth of my twin nephews. Despite my desire to meet the children, I couldn't bring myself to do so. Several years passed without any contact from my sister until one unexpected day when she called me. I picked up, concerned that something might be wrong. Strangely calm, she expressed her longing to reconnect. I admitted missing her too, but I reiterated my unwavering stance regarding her husband. She proposed that he would apologize if given a chance and insisted they both wanted me back in their lives. Despite my reservations, she urged me to meet my nephews. Caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, I hesitated. Before I could respond, she revealed her immediate need for help babysitting the kids, emphasizing that I was her only reliable option. Feeling cornered, I questioned my reliability, as I had never even met her children. She assured me they were prepared to apologize and reconcile, emphasizing the importance of having their uncle in their lives. Feeling overwhelmed, I asked for time to think. I admitted my desire to meet my nephews, but expressed my discomfort with suddenly being entrusted to babysit kids I had never met before. I told her to give me space, promising to revisit the conversation later. I grappled with my decision, wondering if I was wrong for not wanting to babysit my nephews due to my unresolved issues with her husband. Feeling guilty about declining my sister's request, I sought solace in a conversation with my parents. They reassured me that, while they accepted my sister and her kids, they couldn't embrace her husband into the family. Their support meant the world to me. Opening up to them about my dilemma, I expressed my remorse for not helping my sister. That's when they disclosed that she had recently lost her job, causing financial strain. It became clear they were struggling and needed a free babysitter, with me being the first choice. I inquired about her husband's situation and why he couldn't assist. My parents revealed he had never held a job for more than 3 months, and his family had cut ties due to fights. Oddly satisfying was the realization that my high school bully had become a non-contributing member of society. While my parents advised against babysitting, the final decision lay with me. Despite my initial determination to help, I wrestled with the fact that my sister only contacted me out of necessity. It felt incredibly selfish, making me wonder if her husband's influence was at play. The internal struggle persisted since her call, but ultimately, I knew I couldn't accept her offer. Summoning the courage, I called my sister to decline, even though I felt compelled to apologize. She questioned my refusal, prompting me to explain that being near her husband triggered painful memories. She grew upset, accusing me of dwelling in the past and being stubborn. I firmly told her she didn't know the whole story, emphasizing her lack of right to judge my decision. She coldly told me to stop whining about a little bullying and move on. I was seething with anger because she had witnessed my panic attacks caused by her husband. I confided in her about my suicide attempt, something our parents had kept from her because she was away at college at the time. After hearing the full extent of my pain, she was left speechless. I laid out the reasons why I couldn't be near him and accused her of being insensitive for forcing me into that situation. She promptly apologized, but it fell flat for me. I felt like her apology came too late. She should have supported me long before knowing the truth. Reminding her that she'd had chosen her husband when I asked her to decide, I told her she needed to let me go. She couldn't have everything and everyone. I couldn't understand why she would marry such a horrible person after everything he had put me through. To me, both she and her husband were reprehensible. She should have stood by me, making her equally culpable. I commended our parents for standing by my side all this time. Now, shifting to our second story, my closest friend is getting married in Sicily this August with less than a year's notice. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, but I'm starting to feel unappreciated. Despite their wealth, my friend, who doesn't currently work, has invited people from all over the world. My little sister was uninvited due to guest list cuts. They chose a 5-star hotel for the venue, expecting guests to pay for their own accommodations from Thursday to Monday. Moreover, there's a Shabbat dinner, but the bridal party isn't invited because there's not enough space. When I raised concerns, the bride shrugged it off, saying it wasn't a priority for her fiancé, who cited the cost. She later posted about services being available at a price, making me question her appreciation for her guests' efforts. We wore our old gold jewelry and shoes. She didn't provide an itinerary or any planned events for the bridal party during the 5 days. This wedding was estimated to cost between $5,000 and $8,000 Canadian dollars, not to mention the week of unpaid time off work. She believed she only had to cover expenses for the wedding day and considered the rehearsal dinner a gift. The bride and groom didn't feel obligated to make the bridal party and guests feel appreciated. They were also planning a $50,000 safari for part of their honeymoon. I have been deeply involved in the wedding planning, even organizing the entire bachelorette party. However, my efforts were marred when my friend relayed a negative comment from one of her friends about the bachelorette location after I had already planned the trip. When I expressed feeling unappreciated, she did apologize, but it left me questioning my decision. Am I the asshole here? My friend's family and others are advising me not to go, considering the substantial cost of $5,000, plus a week of lost wages, and being entirely on someone else's schedule. They suggest I apologize with vague comments about wishing them the best but explaining I won't be able to make it. They're convinced that I shouldn't go, arguing that I shouldn't spend such a significant amount on something like this. Furthermore, taking time off or losing a week's pay for this event seems unreasonable. While I'm willing to go to great lengths for my best friend, it appears she's expecting too much without considering the financial impact on me. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like button. Let's dive into our next story. I, a 31-year-old female, met Lisa, a 36-year-old female, in my accounting class, and we bonded as adult students. Lisa was severely behind on her homework due to a pipe break at her place. She and her 2 daughters had to shower at a hotel on weekends and make do with sink wash-offs during the week. Despite her challenging situation, she took on 7 classes this semester to graduate on time in May. She asked if I could stay with her at school for a homework session. I explained it was uncomfortable for me and invited her and her daughters over for a joint homework session and playdate at my home. She expressed her gratitude and said she would bring a pizza for the kids, planning to arrive at 6:30 p.m., excited to cook curry chicken and rice. I started preparing before her arrival. However, she showed up earlier than expected at 5:30 p.m. I had made enough for her, myself, and my neighbor along with their kids, who were fans of my cooking. I hadn't prepared anything for my son and my classmates' kids, as my son had expressed a preference for ramen, and she had mentioned bringing pizza. When she arrived, she immediately went upstairs to use the bathroom. It was slightly awkward, but I brushed it off. However, I noticed she hadn't brought any pizza, so I inquired. She explained she got her 2 daughters Wendy's instead. I asked her daughter's age, and she said 5, although she looked older and taller than my son. The mom corrected her, stating she was 3 and had a speech impediment. Despite noticing the kids asking for food, I didn't offer them my leftovers, thinking it wasn't my responsibility. Later, the kids expressed their reluctance to leave, and the mom asked if they could spend the night. Overwhelmed and considering it was a weekday, I declined. Am I the asshole for not sharing my leftovers, which consisted of 1 piece of chicken, rice, and veggies, and refusing to let them spend the night? I did provide the kids with snacks like popcorn and Oreos. She mentioned the 9-year-old's Wendy's meal had been accidentally thrown away. Second edit. I invited her over for dinner, but she declined, citing her class that night. I suggested the kids could come over when she attended class instead of staying with their dad. This was what she had told me about their routine. After discussing her situation, she revealed they were homeless and washed up at school due to broken pipes. She asked to stay overnight, but I declined. Am I the asshole for not helping her and her kids in this situation? Many have suggested calling child services. In our 4th and final story, my family has always been well off, enjoying frequent vacations. However, when my dad recently booked a trip to Italy, there was an oversight regarding my wife. In a family group chat buzzing with excitement, I called my dad to thank him for including my wife, who had often felt left out. To my surprise, my dad informed me that he had booked the available seats, leaving no room for my wife. He hadn't considered her in his plans. I now realize many might consider this a mere mistake, but I disagree. This exclusion isn't an isolated incident, it's part of a pattern. My wife has been overlooked in various ways before. If it were genuinely a mistake, my dad would have made every effort to rectify it before the vacation was announced. My heart sank when I realized my wife had once again been disregarded. I glanced at her. She could sense something was amiss. That's when I firmly told my dad to give my seat to someone else. If she wasn't included, I wouldn't be going either. In the past, I used to find ways to include my wife, but I was weary of always having to advocate for her. They never did this to my sister and her husband. They were always included as a couple. But when it came to my wife and me, we always had to find our own way in, as if we weren't taken seriously. I decided I wouldn't do that anymore. This time, I drew a hard line in the sand. This man had the audacity to suggest that my wife and I could book our own flight and just meet them there. My response was a resounding no, and I hung up. Needless to say, my wife was in tears, upset but also relieved that I stood up for her. A couple of days passed, and my wife and I decided to embark on our own vacation to a more modest location. A large rental cabin with her family, who are incredibly supportive. When my family found out, they bombarded my phone with messages. My mom even called, telling me I was being unreasonable. According to her, it was just a simple mistake on my dad's part, and I could easily book a separate flight and plan an entirely different vacation with my wife. I explained to her that this was about the consistent exclusion of my wife from every family-related event since our marriage. My mom dismissed my concerns, calling me crazy and insisting I was overthinking the situation. Despite her words, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this exclusion than met the eye. Thank you all for your overwhelming support. My wife and I had a heart-to-heart discussion about our next steps. We've decided to have a family meeting with my relatives this Monday and confront them head-on. We believe it's the best way to address the situation and seek honest answers from them. Many of you mentioned gaslighting, and we intend to learn more about it to protect ourselves better. I made a promise to my wife when we got married. She would always be my priority. I intend to keep that promise. Thank you once again for your support, and I hope to provide you with an update soon. Best wishes to all.
As I prepared for remarriage, Peter looked at me, a trace of irony in his voice. Since I'm getting remarried, it's only fair for you to find a new place to live. The responsibility of the $15,000 loan will now fall on my new partner, he said. I couldn't believe his nerve, handing off a financial obligation I had worked so hard to pay down. Then, I guess those $6,000 monthly payments are now yours to handle, I replied, making sure he understood how much I'd shouldered on my own. Unfazed, I resumed drafting the divorce papers, resolute. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew they would no longer be mine to carry. My name is Sarah, a 43-year-old part-time worker and homemaker. Peter, my soon-to-be ex-husband, is 4 years older, and we've been married for a decade. We met at our old company when I was fully dedicated to my career with little thought for marriage or romance. But at 32, a friend urged me to switch jobs, which led me into a new chapter of my life. Shortly afterward, Peter, a senior colleague from my previous job, confessed his feelings for me. From the start, our relationship was seen through the lens of marriage. Despite my hesitations, we married 3 years later, largely due to family pressure. Peter's parents were very supportive, treating me like a daughter, which helped me settle into married life. A year into our marriage, we built a house together, a symbol of our shared dreams, despite the heavy loan and long-term repayment plan. In those early years, we were a typical working couple, supporting each other's ambitions and managing finances together. But 4 years into the marriage, just as we started talking about having children, Peter announced he was quitting his job to start his own business. A lifelong dream of his, he had hoped to become an entrepreneur by the time he was 41 and had been quietly making connections and saving for it. The news was a shock, as he had already resigned before telling me. It hurt to know he hadn't included me in such a major decision, especially since he expected my income to cover us during his transition. Shortly after launching his business, a family crisis struck. My father-in-law became gravely ill, needing extended hospital care. We quickly realized he wouldn't be able to return home without significant modifications to accommodate his condition. Though my in-laws insisted they could handle it financially, Peter unilaterally decided that we would cover the costs of all the renovations. I wanted to support my family however I could, but taking on all these expenses was daunting. Our household costs soared, and I found myself reeling under the weight of our financial pressures. Peter's business struggled to gain traction, with frequent contract cancellations and few new opportunities. His income had dropped sharply, leaving me to cover our living expenses and the substantial loan payments on my own. Despite the near collapse of his earnings, Peter seemed strangely detached, brushing off my concerns as if the problem was someone else's. As our credit card debt began to mount, Peter continued his nights out, claiming they were essential for building client relationships. With debt piling up and our future clouded by financial strain, I suggested we consider drastic measures, either sell the house or shut down the business. Peter, ever the optimist, waved it off, insisting we just needed to persevere. In reality, we were barely scraping by on my steady income alone. I was shouldering the full weight of our finances, while Peter remained oblivious to the seriousness of our situation. Discussing it felt increasingly futile as he dismissed my concerns as long as bills were covered on time. Gradually, our conversations faded, and though I knew Peter was seeing other women under the pretense of work, I felt a strange indifference toward him. One evening, after I returned home from work, Peter broke our long-standing silence. Smirking, he tossed a piece of paper onto the table in front of me and announced with smug satisfaction, "I've decided to divorce you. Please sign here." Peter's words, as he handed me the papers, hit with less impact than I expected. I took a deep breath, surprisingly calm, knowing that I'd been considering this step myself if he hadn't gotten there first. "Can we wait a moment? I just got home. Let's sit down in the living room to discuss this," I suggested. "So now you want to talk, but you're just dragging things out?" he replied, irritation lacing his voice. "I don't need pointless chit-chat. Just get it over with." Ignoring his impatience, I walked slowly to the living room, feeling his frustration build. I was determined to pace this final moment on my own terms, after everything else had unfolded on his. Divorce was now inevitable, and the life we had carefully built was slipping away. As I settled on the sofa, I picked up the papers again. They felt fragile in my hands, much like the marriage certificate we had signed 12 years ago, a piece of paper that had once meant so much. "How long are you going to sit there staring at them?" Peter's voice cut through my thoughts, edged with annoyance. "I wanted to discuss our plans after the divorce." "What do you intend to do?" I asked, meeting his eyes. "Are you reconsidering?" "Because I'm committed to moving forward," he replied dismissively. "No, I'm not reconsidering," I replied evenly. "But I think it's important we talk through the details. I've heard you're planning to remarry. There must be someone new in your life. I imagine she's young, attractive, maybe financially stable. Unlike me, an older woman without children to tie us together." He scoffed. "You seem to think poorly of me. Let's be clear. I have always managed our finances carefully, ensuring you never had to worry about a single bill," I said, my voice steady, "despite how much you've taken that for granted." In that moment, I realized that the person in front of me, once central to my life, had already become a stranger. The future I was about to step into felt clearer than ever. "I believe I'll be better off without you," I said calmly, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. "Honestly, this divorce is a weight lifted. I'll ignore your harsh words as nothing more than frustration from someone who's feeling defeated. There's no more to say, and soon, I won't have to see you again. Please be sure to move out by the end of the week." "Actually, I'm leaving today. I can't stand listening to you any longer," Peter replied with a sneer. "Oh, and in case you're wondering, my new partner knows about the debts. She's agreed to pitch in $1,000 a month for our living expenses, should it be too hard for her, unlike it was for you." Once I signed the papers, I gathered the last of my things. "I'm leaving immediately. The furniture can stay. Consider it part of the asset division. Feel free to get rid of it if it's useless to you," I said, handing him a note with detailed loan information. "You might want to share this with her," I added, giving him a final, steady look. With that, I walked out, got into my car, and drove away from what was once our home. My destination was clear: City Hall, to submit the divorce papers. Relief washed over me, the weight of years finally lifting. As I drove, I realized how much sooner I should have made this choice, and how I'd wasted so much time worrying about him and the financial burdens he'd left behind. A week later, I woke to my phone buzzing insistently. Peter. I'd expected he'd reach out eventually, but the repeated calls were more irritating than anything else. Finally, I answered. I decided to answer the phone. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my irritation in check. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important," he replied, defensive. "But, is it true what I heard about the $6,000? I sighed. "I have no reason to lie about this. Are you expecting me to cover your debts now? Everything you need to know is in that note I left." "I'm calling because I still don't get it, even after reading it," he said, frustration seeping into his voice. Taking a deep breath, I prepared to explain. "All right, let me break it down. Besides the mortgage, there are other expenses. The renovation costs for your parents' home, the personal loan for your father's medical bills, the business loan from your venture, and all the credit card debt, all of it in your name. If it were just the mortgage, I might have managed. But there's far more, and now that we're divorced, it's no longer my responsibility. I told you when I left, there's a $6,000 monthly payment due, I reminded him. You spent money recklessly, and now it's catching up to you. Did you ever think about those payments? Well, now they're yours to handle, alongside your new girlfriend. Isn't that why you divorced me in the first place? Actually, she broke up with me, Peter admitted quietly. She said $6,000 a month is too much. I figured as much, I replied. Even someone with a high income would hesitate to take on debt they didn't create. Did your salary increase after you changed jobs? Yes, it increased fivefold, he admitted, but all that extra income goes straight to repayments. It was clear he was finally beginning to realize the weight of what he'd signed up for. I had no idea you were making that much, I said, surprised. If I'd known, I might not have suggested the divorce. It's not like you didn't know, he countered. You just weren't interested. After I changed jobs, you never once asked about my work or my salary. You should have brought it up yourself, I replied. You barely communicated even before you started making more. When you had little to no income, you still spent as if there was no limit. He sighed, frustration evident. Let's start over. Come back to me. I can't, I stated firmly. I finally reclaimed my freedom. But $6,000 a month in payments is unmanageable. Why don't we sell the house? You could use some of your income to pay down the debts, he suggested. Why should I? I responded, my voice calm. I have no part in those debts. I'm not interested in a stranger's financial burdens. You're incredibly cold, he said, his tone wounded. Don't you have any empathy? Maybe I do seem cold, I replied, but I've made payments on those debts for over 7 years. At first, it was for love, but then it was out of duty to your parents. You wanted the divorce. You chose this path. I took a deep breath. Technically, I could sell the house, divide our assets, and even file for alimony due to your infidelity. But honestly, I just want my peace. I'm exhausted from covering your reckless spending. My life is finally mine. With that, I ended the call. After our conversation, Peter stopped reaching out. The relief was immense. I later learned he'd lost both his job and the house and had to devise a new repayment plan. Going back to his old job wasn't easy under everyone's scrutiny, and his loan payments remained a constant burden. His parents, unfortunately, had to sell their home and move into a retirement facility. Knowing they wouldn't have had to make such a difficult decision if we hadn't divorced, I decided to help. I assisted with their move and contributed financially to cover the entry fees, a small way to repay the kindness they'd shown me. I genuinely hope they can now find some peace, free from that financial weight. As for me, I've embraced a simpler, frugal lifestyle, and am comfortably building my savings. I'm exploring investment options to secure my financial future, and life with my new partner, whom I met after the divorce, feels fulfilling both personally and professionally. At last, I'm finding the happiness I had been missing for so long.